be sitting on the components of their third one. Fighting now would still put you at a disadvantage, but it's not insurmountable. Basically, to sum this all up, you're really trying to avoid the following. If you fight after buying an item component and your opponent has just finished their next core, then you'd be at an even bigger disadvantage. You're almost guaranteed to lose that fight, which is obviously not good. Now, of course, there is a ton of nuance in this game. We get that, and following this advice, it won't win you every single fight. But as a new player, if you've got absolutely no idea of when you're strong or when you're not, or when to brawl, then just remember our core item rule and you're going to be okay. Fight right after shopping, and you're much more likely to come out ahead. Okay, so skirmishing. It's something you'll definitely do a lot of in League. Many players get into the game because of a common notion that League has a lot of strategy elements. And while that's definitely true, League has moved way more towards rewarding skirmishing and fighting skill over the years. And as a result, your mechanical skill in the game, it does matter a lot. Don't be afraid by hearing this, though. You don't need to be a 16-year-old who plays 10 hours a day and has amazing reflexes to perform. But you should definitely care about some of the more important concepts that will make your champion feel a lot more fluid and allow you to score more kills. The first is a super simple one that you may not be aware of if you're new to MOBAs, which is called attack moving. Basically, you're going to have a hard time playing your character. It happens if you're always trying to right-click who you want to attack. For example, let's say you're a melee character and you're trying to kite around the enemy champion to both hit them and dodge their spells. If you only use right click, you're going to find it's really difficult to do it. You have to right click where you want to move, then put your cursor back on your opponent, then back to where you want to move, and so on and so forth. It is very easy to mess all this up, causing you to cancel auto attacks, misclick, and so on. It's especially deadly on ranged champions that want to keep their distance. So let's say you're running away from a threatening melee champion, but you want to keep hitting them as you run away. If you right click, walk back, and then right click to hit them, you might misclick the ground, causing your character to walk into the enemy champion, which could absolutely get you killed, and it's probably happened to you. Instead, you should adjust the attack move keybind to fix this issue. When you press A, your cursor is going to turn red, and you're going to get an outline of your auto attack range. Then, if you left click the ground, you're going to automatically move to where you clicked and then hit the target closest to you. If you're already in range of someone, though, you're just going to begin auto attacking immediately. As you can see, this keybind lets you get away with less precise clicks. It sounds complicated. I get what I just said could sound like that, but it's so easy to do. And the best part is that it's going to make your life infinitely easier if you're not already using this. Notice how we can hit the target in front of us without ever having to accurately click on them. Our cursor can stay horizontal the entire time by simply using a combination of regular right clicks and auto move clicks. This is a lifesaver for attack-based champions trying to kite in between auto attacks because it allows your clicks to be imprecise. Notice how, unlike in our previous example, it is much easier for the marksman to keep their range by using this technique. Their mouse is always behind them, letting them kite and hit their opponent at the exact same time without requiring much effort at all. Now, there is some tips to improve this, though. Attack move technically requires 2 clicks. First A to change your cursor and bring up your range indicator, and then a left click to input the command. Now, if you want to turn this into 1 click, go into your settings, hotkeys, then open up player movement. From there, change the keybind from player attack move to player attack move click instead. This is going to make it so you only need to press that 1 keybind to attack move rather than having to left click as well. Now, this is a personal preference, though. Use whichever you prefer. Another issue you may run into, though, is that you won't have precise target selection. Let's say you want to hit the target in the back here. The problem is attack moving automatically prioritizes whatever target is closest to you, which clearly sucks. Open up your settings, go to game, scroll down, and enable attack move on cursor. This is a pretty awesome setting where your attack will prioritize the target closest to your cursor, allowing you to control your auto attacks just a little bit more without needing extreme precision. And by the way, having the right settings makes this game so much easier to play, so if you're looking for more useful ones just like that one, then check out our settings guide right after this. So as for our next tip, it's going to make your movement even more fluid combined with attack movement. What you want to do is cancel the wind down animation of your auto attacks. You can think of your autos in 3 separate parts. The wind up animation, where your champion begins the auto attack, then the actual auto animation going off, and then the wind down, where your champion kind of just resets their weapon. This final animation, it's completely useless. All you need to know is that right after your auto attack goes off, you should input another movement command to cancel the wind down, letting you begin moving a whole lot faster. This sounds way more complicated than it really is. All you're doing is auto attacking and then immediately trying to move afterwards. Now, we'd suggest going to the training tool and getting a feel for this. champions with high amounts of attack speed definitely benefit from mastering this concept along with attack moving. And as you can see, your champion will seem much more fluid to play by canceling that wind down animation. Now, something to note is that this timing changes based on your attack speed. So in this example, Trundle's W ability places a field on the ground, giving him a ton of attack speed while it's active. You can see that as it ran out, he ended up messing up the timing on an auto attack here. So while you're in the training pool, we definitely suggest buying various amounts of attack speed when practicing. This way you can get a better feel for how the timing is going to change as the game progresses. Trust us, this absolutely is not hard to learn either. Just spend a few minutes in the training tool and you are going to have this down in no time. So before you can even get to a new fight to use all these new skills though, you need to power through the laning phase, which involves obviously killing minions, and a lot of them. And probably the single most beneficial skill any new player can learn is being a bit more consistent in scoring the last hits on every minion. Minion gold is by far your most reliable income in League. And to put it into perspective, on average, 15 minions is about a kill worth of gold. So if you find that you're mistiming the last hits on minions, then you're throwing tons of gold down the drain and you need to listen up to our following tip. So later into the game, your spells do tend to destroy waves, so it's much easier to score last hits late in the game. But in lane, you're typically trying to secure each minion with your auto attack or a weak spell. To make this more consistent, pay attention to how much damage you're dealing with your autos or abilities. Keep those numbers in mind at all times. Then on last hits that you're going to be unsure about, you want to left click a minion to open up their information panel on the top left. What most players do is eyeball it and try to guess when they should last hit. But with this panel, you can wait for the minion to drop below the health threshold of your auto or spell. This way you're going to know for certain whether you can score a last hit or not. And of course, this isn't a tip you can implement every time, all the time. But if your opponent is trading aggressively in lane with you, you're not going to have time to click on a minion and focus on his HP at the top left. But at the very least, you can use this whenever you have breathing room and you aren't being pressured, especially on the cannon minions. Securing those is the equivalent of 3 last hits, so you definitely want to do everything possible to make sure you don't miss those. As simple and newbie as this tip sounds, even the very best players in the world still use it consistently. That's just how effective it is for securing those all-important cannon minions. Now, on the topic of killing minions, later on into the game, waves start dying pretty quickly to your spells. However, there is a common issue that we notice a lot of newer players dealing with. Settings guides all over YouTube, and including our very own, will often recommend to newer players that they should quick cast their abilities. If you haven't done this yet, we would recommend doing so here in the settings. Basically, it just makes it so you don't have to press an ability and then left click for it to go off. Instead, your spell's going to go off immediately after pressing the initial keybind. This is quite important in League as it allows you to combo abilities a whole lot faster. But we found that newer players often suffer a huge issue when using quick casting, particularly around minion waves. Most champions have 1, maybe 2 spells that deal area of effect damage, which allows them to clear waves. But if you quick cast your spell, you might misplace it, not hitting all of the way. Now it's going to take you forever to kill all those minions, which can significantly reduce your ability to help your team at fights or objectives. In League, you're going to be interacting with minions a whole lot, so you definitely don't want to be slow at clearing waves. You're going to spend a lot of time doing a whole lot of doing. And so, you want to make sure you have both a quick cast keybind for your spells, but also a normal cast one. Typically, players are going to use a shift modifier so they can use the normal cast version when needed. Now, as you can see, this lets you line up your spells perfectly, allowing you to clear those minions quickly. Now you're going to have way more time to join up with your team and enjoy the fun parts of the game. There's a wide variety of spells in League which will interact with minion waves in a bunch of different ways, so using normal cast is extremely important, particularly on mages who are a bit more ability focused than other classes. Now, for our all-important final tip, let's talk about vision. Your trinket gives you periodic wards, which are important for lighting up the map with information. The problem is, these are limited, so you want to get the most value possible out of each and every ward. You want to be able to consistently spot potential threats coming your way, so you're caught off guard less and less often. So here's the tip. Try not to mindlessly place your wards. An extremely important concept you want to keep in mind is that you want to place them in areas with
I expect justice. Now strike.
For example, if you're a mid laner, putting your ward in a brush beside you is kind of mediocre. You're only going to see enemy champions that come through specifically in that area. It's still useful and will give you that, but absolutely not. We'll just give you some of the best ward locations in the game here so you always know how to get the most out of it. You're going to notice that the area One of the best wards you can place is around the Raptor Camp. Any one of these 4 locations are going to do. It just kind of depends on what you feel you can get away with safely. Enemy junglers path through here consistently. You're going to notice that there's a lot of different paths to take in the
Hold nothing back.
Spot them and see what they're going to do next. Remember that every ward we're going to discuss here is simply just mirrored red side.
What?
There's no difference whatsoever. The next is these 2 wards deep in the enemy's jungle. Here they're wolf. So make sure you place this one
Yes!
Rush and spots players going this way. Now, typically you can't place these all the time as they're quite deep in the enemy's jungle. The safer versions you can place are here and here. Now, both of these will usually spot enemy champions coming back out onto the map as well, so don't feel too bad if you can't get the deeper versions that we mentioned before. If you want vision of the other side of the jungle, then this deep Raptor ward that we've seen before is good, as well as this one right over here. But if you can't get those, then this Raptor ward we discussed earlier is way more than fine. And finally, one of the best wards in the game is one that you can only place after you've destroyed the first mid lane tower. Place it a little past the remnants of the tower, outside of the range of the second one. In League, place it on the gravitate and path toward mid lane quite a lot. If left alive, this ward's going to give your team a ton of information, and you should look to place it whenever possible. Now, of course, any area where your ward will spot multiple pathways from your opponent is more than fine. Just make sure you're actively thinking about where you place your wards and not just autopilot putting them down where they won't get much value. And that right there is a wrap on our 7 super easy tips to immediately apply as a beginner in League. Remember, if you really want to get into the groove of this game fast with a course dedicated to teaching players who are actually new to the game, then check us out over at SkillCapped. We promise you we can get you comfortable playing League in no time. A discount link to our site is below, and other than that, we'll see you next time.
What's the breaker?
You're going to learn exactly why you suck at farming in League of Legends in simple, easy to apply ways to fix it. My name's Hex, I'm a multi-season challenger player that's been teaching League of Legends here at SkillCapped for over 10 years. And if there's one thing I've learned in that time, it's that getting good at farming is one of the fastest ways to climb ranks. The problem is there are tons of myths and misconceptions around farming. The biggest myth about farming is that having high CS numbers means being good at CSing in the laning phase. Getting insane farm leads actually mainly comes from macro in the mid game. Let me explain. One minion wave is worth 125 gold on average. That is until the 15-minute mark, where one minion wave is worth 147 gold on average, meaning they become 18% more valuable. This is because at the 15-minute mark, siege minions begin spawning every 2 waves instead of every 3, increasing the average gold value. And finally, at the 25-minute mark, each minion wave becomes worth 195 gold on average. Again, this is because siege minions now spawn on every single wave. That's a 33% increase in gold. Now, while minions themselves become worth more gold, you as a champion actually outscale them too. You get more items, which means more damage, which means you can clear those waves even faster. And you'll have boot upgrades, meaning you can move faster to take other things on the map. Here's an easy way to visualize this. So every 30 seconds a wave spawns. In the early game, if you last hit 2 waves perfectly, you would get 12 minions in 1 minute. However, later on in the mid game, you can clear waves and move so fast you could clear 1 wave, then go and farm nearby camps and get back to the next wave. Or you could clear 1 wave, then rotate to an empty lane to pick up the wave there. Both of those scenarios allow you to potentially double that 12 minions in 1 minute to 24. It gets even crazier, because when towers fall, it means you can move up the lane while farming multiple waves. This means you're clearing waves faster since you're not waiting for those minions to get to you like in the early game. Instead, you're saving time by moving further up the lane, clearing that next wave sooner. Eventually, you hit a tower or a point in which you can't continue moving forward, but again, you can then rotate to take jungle camps or simply recall, and if a lane is pushed to your side, you can push that out, farming at an accelerated rate by moving up the lane while you clear waves. Basically, what this means is that when it comes to farming, the early game is more about not falling behind rather than CSing perfectly. This is because if you fall too far behind, it will make you slow in the mid-game macro phase since you have less items and you'll clear waves slower. You won't be able to start taking jungle camps as early on, while also having to play around more enemies that are stronger than you, which means you can't push a lane as far up. If all of that isn't convincing enough that big farm leads are created in the mid game, then the cherry on top is death timers. Early on, dying doesn't really result in missed farms simply due to the fact that death timers are so low, while you'll also spawn with home guards. However, in the mid game, death timers are going to be 30 seconds or longer. And since you can farm at that accelerated pace as we just covered, it means each one of those seconds are incredibly incredibly valuable. So if the first biggest myth about farming is that it happens in the early game, well then the second biggest myth about farming is that everyone should be aiming to farm 10 CS per minute. In reality, your CS per minute should be entirely determined by the champion and role you're playing. For example, Master Plus top laners that play Tryndamere average 8.5 CS per minute. Compare that to Master Plus top laners who play Malphite that average 6.34 CS per minute. The difference in CS per minute is caused by, surprise, a difference in mid-game macro strategies. In the mid-game, Tryndamere can push a side lane into then farming jungle camps easily between waves due to his high damage per second. However, Malphite doesn't have that high DPS, he's more about burst and tankiness, and so his main macro strategy will be pushing a wave, then roaming off that timing to get takedowns. So make sure you have reasonable expectations for the champion and role you're playing. Now, here's the thing, regardless of the macro strategy you implement or the champion you play, if you want to improve your farming, then you absolutely need to understand the essential concept of dead time. Dead time applies to both laners and junglers, but it's easier to understand if you look at a jungle example first. Don't worry, we'll be showing laning examples after. So, at its core, dead time is a simple concept. When a jungler, such as this Talia, farms her entire jungle, there's a period of time she has to wait until her camp starts spawning again. This is what's called dead time because it's when all the camps are dead. The reason why it's so valuable is that any play she makes during this time has much lower risk, since if it doesn't work out, she didn't give up any farm to do it. It's basically the most efficient time for you to fight. Now, here's why dead time is such a secret killer if you don't understand it or use it. So, when Karthus respawns, he heads to the bot side scuttle. This is perfectly fine. However, notice how his camps are beginning to respawn. He's hitting the end of his dead time, yet he's not aware of this, and is going to make the mistake of trying to make plays outside of his dead time. This will pretty much single-handedly lose Karthus this game. Let me explain why. So, he finally farms the scuttle, and then after decides to invade. When you do something like this, trying to make plays or fight outside of your dead time, it has two downsides. First, it's riskier because if he dies or it doesn't work out, he's going to lose the golden experience he would have gained if he farmed those camps. In this case, he could have farmed his Gromp, which is worth 80 gold. You then also have to factor in the time it takes to walk all the way back to his camps, which is approximately the time it would take him to farm his wolves. And that wolf camp is worth 81 gold. So, you can think of it as him risking 161 gold right now to go for this play, since that's what he would have gained if he just AFK farmed. Secondly, it actually means any positive play he makes will be less valuable. Raptors are worth 81 gold. However, when you steal a camp, it's worth double, since you also deny that amount of gold from the enemy. So, Karthus stealing this camp was worth 162 gold. However, remember, he could have just farmed Gromp and Wolves during this time, which is worth 161. So, he literally risked 161 gold to gain 162. Going for this play got him 1 additional gold compared to if he just AFK farmed his jungle. Are you starting to see just how hard it is to be efficient with your gold generation when you force plays outside of your dead time? Basically, Karthus would have had to not only steal the Raptor camp, but also kill Talia for this play to end up being worth the risk. You can think of when your camps are alive, or as you're going to see shortly, a minion wave has arrived in lane, as your time to farm. Good players look to get past this farming time as fast as possible to maximize the amount of dead time they have to then look for plays. Dead time is a complete game changer once you start using it, and I'm actually really curious to hear from you guys. What's the one thing that you've learned that gave you the biggest boost to your win rate? Let me know in the comments section below as I read all of your comments. And speaking of boosting your win rate, if you want to learn how to carry bad teammates and finally rank up, then you absolutely need our brand new Season 14 multi-chapter courses teaching you how to carry as a top laner, jungler, mid laner, AD carry, and support. Pair that with our other new courses on how to counter OP top laners, OP mid laners, master your jungle clears, or check out our new Bronze to Diamond series. It doesn't stop there. We have new Season 14 courses on macro, wave control, trading. I coached a SkillCap subscriber for over 1 month straight in order to teach you in this guide how to actually jungle in solo queue. My name's Hex. I'm a multi-season challenger player who's been teaching League of Legends here at SkillCapped for over 10 years. And every time I make a guide, there's always someone who leaves a comment about how what I'm teaching only works in high elo games. That if I were to play in the depths of their elo hell, the teammates would be so bad it would just come down to luck. Fair enough, I thought. So then I started creating guides showing me using those same concepts in all the low elo ranks to help prove it actually works. But when I did that, I'd then get a comment or two about how now it only works because I just have god tier mechanics, so of course I'll win in low ranks no matter what I do. Well, let's be honest, clearly they haven't seen my actual gameplay. Joking aside, I do hear you. You want to see an actual average player apply these concepts and see results. So that's exactly what I set out to do. I found a random skill cap subscriber I'd never talked to before, hopped into Discord, and set out with a simple mission. Let's find out exactly what's holding them back from ranking up higher, and then teach them the solutions to fix it. And most importantly, find out if those solutions actually work. And now that's exactly what you're going to discover in today's guide. You'll get to see their progression, the mistakes they make, learn the fixes to those mistakes, and see them then try to apply those lessons. Now, as mentioned, this guide took over a month to create, as it's actually just one part of an entire course we've been building, where you can find the next 6 episodes already live right now for you to watch. It even includes all of the coaching sessions we had, so you too can learn everything that was taught, and the Smurf commentaries, where I then show how to actually apply what was taught in the lesson. This course is still ongoing, meaning each week you'll be able to keep up with the lessons they learned, new obstacles they face, and progress made. This is already over 10 hours of content that you can not only unlock right now, but that will also give you access to our premier 5-chapter jungling course that teaches you from start to finish everything you need to start carrying as a jungler. Pair that with our new champion clear course that teaches you the fastest way to clear on your champion, and you're going to be climbing through the ranks in no time. The best part though is you can try all of this out completely risk-free, since if you don't rank up while actively using skill cap, you'll get your money back, no questions asked. You can unlock all of this right now through the discount you can only get from the link below. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below to get
Stand
the link
with your soldiers and never falter.
After our first coaching session became incredibly clear, the first mistake that was holding them back from climbing was how he was balancing farming and ganking. A lot of his ganks, and probably yours too, would end up looking like this. You can see he's ganking mid with 2 camps still alive topside. This eventually results in trading kills where the enemy jungler gets much further ahead. Here he's ganking topside when he has 2 camps alive. This results in him trading kills as well. And here, he's ganking bot when he has 2 camps alive as well, which then results in trading 2 for 1. So, why do I call these mistakes if he's still getting kills? Well, there's a hidden cost to these ganks, the camps you didn't clear. Now, I need you to bear with me. I'm gonna break this down so you fully understand exactly how this works, but I don't want you to worry. You don't have to calculate any of this in game, and I'm gonna simplify everything at the end. So, the first thing you need to understand is that when you calculate the gold value of all jungle camps, you're gonna discover the average gold value per camp is 84.5. You'll get about 1 bonus treat every clear, which is an extra 20 gold, so putting the average camp value at 87.83. Let's just round it up to 90 to make it easier. Okay, so now when you gank, it's not guaranteed you get a kill worth 300 gold. You could get the assist instead, worth 150. So you need to realize off 1 takedown, the average gold value you personally generate is 225. Now, I already know what you're thinking. So if 2 camps are worth 180 gold on average, but 1 takedown is worth 225, in what world is farming 2 camps better than ganking? Well, it has to do with a concept you're likely missing called expected value. Expected value just represents the average outcome of a scenario if it were to be repeated many times. Basically, if you make this choice over the next 100 games, what is the average outcome? In League of Legends, we can apply this concept to farming and ganking to evaluate which one is actually more valuable. And thankfully for us, it's pretty simple to calculate. It starts with literally just multiplying the gold value of a choice with the probability of it happening. For farming camps, it's really simple. Remember that earlier clip where he ganks mid? Instead of farming 2 camps top, well, 2 camps is worth 180 gold on average. The chances of us farming those camps is literally 100%, so the expected value if we continue farming here is 180 gold. For ganking mid though, it's different. We know the average gold we'll generate on ourselves is 225. However, what's the probability of the gank working? Well, check this out. I made a table showing the value of ganking based on the probability. I want you to notice
Show me the strength of the crown guards.
Success, we generate exactly 180 gold, what we said 2 camps is worth. Alright, just one more thing and then we're done. If we finish calculating what the gank is worth, we can just deduct the expected value of the alternative choice we could have made, the 180 gold for farming 2 camps. This gives you a table like this. So notice how our gank has to work 80% of the time just for us to break even with farming 2 camps instead. This is the concept the student and almost every jungler I know is missing. In order to gank a lane while your camps are alive, you need to be able to accurately predict that you have an 80% chance for the gank to work just to break even. And this is where the concept of dead time comes in. Dead time is just what we call the period of time after you've cleared all your camps. All your camps are dead and haven't respawned yet, hence the name, dead time. So let's compare that exact same scenario from before, but let's say he's ganking mid here when he has no camps alive. Suddenly, the expected value calculation changes dramatically. Since we don't have to factor in farming as an alternative choice, you can now expect some value from a gank as long as it's above a 0% chance of success. So with this in mind, what I told him was for the first few clears of the game, he's now only allowed to gank during his dead time. This wasn't like a hard rule I wanted him to follow forever. It's just so he can truly experience and appreciate the value of dead time. Changed.
If you can hear me, sorry my headset died. It'll be back on in about 5 or 6 minutes. Has this always been in League of Legends, or is this something new they've added? I'm about to lose. Yeah, I lost my archer. Come on, Poppy, get him. We need to upgrade one of these towns. This looks like to be our center hub. What do we need for it? Ooh, we need the smelter, which we have. okay on this one. Get healthy. Oh yeah, we're demolishing them. Too easy. By the way, in about 2 hours, we're going to be doing some lava arena on here if anybody plays raid. Gain 2 valor? Okay. We got a dog. What do we need to do to upgrade our forge? Oh, cool. Be glad to get through these tokens, the silver shields, and actually do some matches. We're going to run Gwen in the jungle. This is going to be a close fight. I hope that our, yeah, we get quartermaster. Okay, I was gonna say, I hope that this goes into effect here. Man, they fucking demolished my archers, though. What do we need to unlock Morgana? 300. We're at 175. Damn. up and then spread them out a little bit. Looks like Poppy and guards would be good on that fight. My headphones should be good now.
Intentionally feeding going to an 18. If you want to see how I did it, the full game with commentary is live right now in our companion course for this guide, where we also have the next 6 episodes already live for you to watch. I go over how to play around the early objectives like dragons, Rift Herald, and Void Grubs, the specific techniques to use that makes using your camera to check lanes way easier, how and why you should be playing fights slow, the macro concept of on-map, off-map that makes your mid to late game way stronger and easier to play, along with a specific macro tactic in the mid-game you must use if you want to climb, and how you should be playing around Baron past 20 minutes if you want to win more games. You'll even unlock all the coaching sessions that teach way more than I can in this one guide alone, and the Smurf commentaries, where I then show you how to apply what was coached in real time. This is over 10 hours of content that you can not only unlock right now, but that will also give you access to our premier 5-chapter jungling course that teaches you from start to finish everything you need to start carrying as a jungler. Pair that with our new champion clear course that teaches you the fastest way to clear on your champion, and you're going to be climbing through the ranks in no time.
Well, well.
Did you know that you can smite Rift Herald for 2100 damage? Or that the player tanking Baron gets a 50% damage debuff? Or that the difference between standing here and here is gaining 1000% more mana per second? What about that you can pull camps outside of their patience range, letting you hide them in brushes? Or that after you clear a ward, laners can still see you for 2 seconds? Or that you can always leave one small wolf, or one small raptor, or one mini Krug alive, and you'll still hit level 3 off 3 camps and level 4 off a full clear? In today's video, you're going to learn the 10 secret jungle mechanics you absolutely must know in order to climb ranks fast in League of Legends. And make sure you watch until the end as we break down some mechanics I promise promise you will have never heard of before. Alright, so the first mechanic you need to master has to do with your jungle pet. Here's what you need to know. After you deal damage to a camp, your pet is going to deal AoE damage to that entire camp 2 times. This means the fastest way to clear multi-monster camps like Krugs, Raptors, and Wolves is to always focus the highest health monster. This way, you maximize the amount of damage your pet does over time. There's a trick though. Let's say you start your Raptors. Obviously, the big raptor has the highest health, so you focus that first. However, you want to left click on the smaller raptors to bring up the panel in the top left. When you see that the big monster you're focusing has lower health than the HP in the panel, that's your time to switch focus to the smaller monsters. This maximizes your DPS and you kill the camp as fast as possible. To prove this, watch what happens if you only focus the big raptor the entire time. It will take 24 seconds to clear it. Simply using this one trick, you'll clear it in 21 seconds instead, 3 seconds faster. You should also be aware your jungle pet heals you and restores mana after killing large monsters. This is actually increased based on your missing health. So often, unless you are expecting to be invaded, you should be saving your potion until after your entire clear is done to maximize your healing. At the same time, when you're in the jungle or river, you gain insane bonus mana regeneration based on missing mana from your pet. You don't have to be attacking camps, just by being in those areas you gain it. This means you should really never be recalling because you're low on mana as a jungler. Jungle pets also come with 2 debuffs you absolutely need to know. First, you get massively reduced experience from all lane minions early on. This is based on the time in the game. At the start, you'll only get 30% of minion XP. At 5 minutes, you get 44% of the XP. At 10 minutes, you get 65% of the XP. And at 15 minutes, you get 79% of the XP. At 20 minutes, this penalty is finally removed. The only exception is if you're 1.5 levels behind the average game level, then you don't get this penalty. But honestly, if you're that far behind this early on in the game, a lane minion XP debuff is the least of your worries. So here's an easy general rule to remember, is minion experience is terrible for junglers until the turret plates fall at 14 minutes, and it's completely removed once Baron spawns. There's also another debuff, where if your total gold earned from minion kills is greater than 40% of your gold from monster kills, well, killing a minion grants you 13 less gold and 50% reduced experience. This should rarely occur, but you'll know if you have this debuff as it shows this icon above your skill bar. Basically, if you have it, just ignore lane minions, they're going to be worthless. This penalty is actually removed earlier at 14 minutes, which again makes turret plates falling a good indicator on when you can actually start farming minion waves as a jungler. Also, while we're on the topic of experience, there's 2 important things you should know. First is that in your opening clear, you can actually leave either 1 small wolf or 1 small raptor or 1 mini Krug alive, and you'll still hit level 3 off 3 camps and level 4 off a full clear. Just do be aware that when you do this, you delay the respawn of that camp by around 5 seconds. The second thing you should know is your jungle pet gives you 80 bonus experience when killing large monsters. This is very important for the Void Grubs, where that XP bonus only applies to the first one you kill. This can let you hit a really fast level 6 timing as a jungler. If you full clear into getting both scuttles from the enemy jungler into full clearing a second time, you'll have enough experience to hit level 6 off the first Void Grub kill. If you are only able to take 1 scuttle after full clearing, then after your second full clear, you have to clear the entire Void Grub camp to hit 6. And if you don't take any scuttles after full clearing, then you won't hit 6 even if you kill all the Void Grubs. Alright, next let's get into kiting your jungle camps. Here's why jungle mechanics like kiting your camps are so important. If you don't kite your camps at all, you can see Master Yi finishes a full clear by 3 minutes and 42 seconds. Now, if you just do pretty basic kiting, nothing too crazy, you're gonna finish that same full clear by 3 minutes and 27 seconds. That's 15 seconds you save just by kiting your camps. This means after just 4 clears, you'll have had a whole extra minute of time to gank, invade, and take objectives. Not to mention, 15 seconds is the difference between getting to the scuttle right as it spawns, or being able to gank 15 seconds before it, getting first blood you otherwise would have missed. That's why we knew we had to collaborate with a jungler known as Shapeshift. She's a juggler with multiple world record clear times that just finished designing a brand new course that teaches you the fastest way to clear on your champion. For example, here's a Silver Master Yi starting at his red with no leash. He ends his full clear at 3 minutes and 31 seconds. Now, here's the Master Yi clear you're gonna learn in our new course. Yeah, you finish your clear at 3 minutes and 14 seconds. That's 17 seconds saved. Then, after you master your champion's clear, take the best jungle course on the entire internet that we just released. It's 5 whole chapters teaching you everything you'll ever need to know to climb ranks fast as a jungler. This is around 3 hours of content where you'll be walked through step by step how to carry as a jungler from the start of the game to the end. The best part, you can try all of this out completely risk-free, since if you don't rank up while actively using skill capped, you'll get your money back, no questions asked. You can unlock all of this through the exclusive discount you can only access through the link below. So, what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below to get the rank you've always wanted. Alright, so as you get more experience kiting your camps, you're gonna notice a few issues come up. The first issue is sometimes you click back to kite, but you'll notice the camp has a long delay before it follows you. This is a real problem since now you're not even kiting the camp, you just walk back to attack it. Or if you do wait for it to finally follow you, you're missing out on damage since your auto attack is already off cooldown. This happens when you try to kite back during the camp's auto attack animation. Specifically, there's 2 parts to every auto animation, the wind up and the wind down. The wind up is the animation up until the damage is applied to you. Then, once the damage is applied to you, it goes into a wind down recovery animation. This can be cancelled by walking back and it will follow you. So an easy fix to this problem is just try to kite back once the camp damages you or when you visually see them finish their attack. The second issue that you may run into is that sometimes you'll be kiting a camp, you'll right click them, but then you'll walk really far into them instead of staying at your max auto attack range. You can see how I walk back quite a bit after this and still auto attack. I am way closer than my max attack range. This is a problem since now you have more distance to cover when you go for your next kite. This issue occurs when you try to attack the camp when your auto attack is still on cooldown. That's why you want to try to develop muscle memory of the timing of your auto attack cooldown. Then you input an attack command right when it comes off cooldown, not earlier and not later. Here's an easy way to understand this mechanic. Just auto attack the camp and out loud count your auto attacks like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then just kite and time your auto attack with each number. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, jungle camps run into that same issue. When the camp's auto attack is on cooldown, if you run out of range, it can end up chasing you closer than its max attack range. You can see how I can walk back quite a bit after this and the camp can still attack. It's way closer than its max range. Again, this is a problem since now we have more distance we have to cover on our next kite. The solution to this is to do a very quick, short step back to put yourself at your maximum auto attack range without kiting the camp. Then, on your next attack, you can kite as normal. Okay, so all of this is great to understand, but how do you actually apply this in a real game? Well, step 1, you need to make sure you're kiting based on your auto attack cooldown. That's your kiting rhythm, so to speak. Step 2 is to recognize when you and the camp end up closer than your max auto attack range after one of your kites. When this happens, do a small adjustment, clicking back to your max auto range, then, after your next auto attack, go back to kiting as normal. And lastly, you can actually use your S hotkey, which is the stop command. Some players find that it makes kiting easier. Basically, if you are just inputting movement and attack commands, your champion is going to always be going back and forth like this. This is a big reason why you end up moving so close to camps. Instead, when you kite back, right before your auto comes off cooldown, you can just press S. This can help reduce the amount of times you move too close to a camp, since you won't be moving towards them prior to your auto attack cooldown. Also, I want to give a big shout out to the content creator Phalaris. He was really the first person to uncover a lot of these more advanced jungle mechanics. I've linked his channel in the description and I highly recommend checking it out. Alright, so to really get the most out of kiting, you're going to have to master the patience mechanic. For every camp, the large monster has a patience bar above their health bar. Additionally, once you aggro a camp, you'll see their patience circle. If the camp moves outside this circle, it's going to start losing patience. It takes around 4 seconds for it to fully lose its patience. patience. That is, unless you're still within the circle, then it's not going to lose patience. This can let you do really crazy things where you actually pull the camp into brushes outside their patience range and then walk back into the patience circle to prevent it from resetting. A simple way to remember how this works is either you or the camp needs to be within the patience circle. It's only when both of you are outside does it start losing patience. At its core though, all you need to know is you're going to save a ton of time in your clears by kiting a camp outside of its patience circle right before it dies. You need to kill it within 4 seconds after pulling it outside the circle, or the patience will run out and it's gonna reset. A good general rule to follow though is that typically if a camp drops below 300 health, you can kite outside of its patience range and it will die before it resets. It sounds simple, but there's actually a really big issue that nearly every jungler runs into and has no idea why it happens. And that's when you kill the large monster in multi-monster camps like Krugs, Raptors, and Wolves. You'll find the small ones will reset really fast. There's actually a hidden mechanic at play here. When the large monster dies, those smaller monsters now get a new patience circle that you cannot see and is much smaller. For example, here you can see I pull the raptor camp to its max patience circle and none of the small raptors are going to reset. But as soon as the big raptor dies, I can no longer pull them to that range. The small ones are going to reset. Instead, I can only pull them to about this range without them resetting. So you need to be aware, you won't be able to kite camps as far if the large monster dies early on. To complicate things even further, there's actually another hidden issue. When you aggro a camp, you'll see how their patience circle extends outside of walls. This is a lie. If you or the camp try to kite to those areas, they're gonna lose patience and reset. So just assume as soon as it cuts line of sight with its original spawn location, it's gonna start losing patience. Okay, so once again, this is all cool to know, but how do you actually apply this in a real game? Well, step 1 is you need to be kiting camps outside of their patience circle to save time in your clears. Do this when the large monster drops below 300 health or when you can kill the camp within 4 seconds. Step 2 is to recognize when you killed the large monster much earlier than the small monsters. You need to make sure not to kite as far as usual. This shouldn't happen with the raptor and wolf camps if you spread out your pet damage properly like we taught you earlier. However, it's completely unavoidable with the Krug camp. Good news, there are 2 fixes to this. The first fix is to simply hold an ability to clear the mini Krugs instantly once they spawn. This will let you kite the Krugs really far outside its patience range with no issue. The second fix is if you don't have an ability to instantly clear them, then you just don't kite the Krug camp past this point. Then, once the mini Krugs have spawned, land 2 autos first before you start kiting. This will give your pet enough time to do damage to then kill the entire camp by you landing 1 more auto as you kite. Now, the fourth mechanic you need to know is pulling camps. The simplest example of this would be if you're finishing your blue, you could actually smite your Gromp to aggro it and pull it towards you. This will save time in your clear since you now don't have to walk to your Gromp to start damaging it. Another common example is when you start raptors. You actually want to aggro this small raptor first. This will pull the camp in a way that makes it group much closer together, which then lets a lot of abilities hit the whole camp instead of just a few. At its most basic though, if you're about to move to the next camp, if you have a ranged ability, you want to look for opportunities to use it early on to pull aggro on the next camp. That way you can start damaging it earlier, increasing your clear speed. A more advanced way of doing this is if you have a strong AoE ability. You can pull the camp you're on while also aggroing the next one to then use your AoE ability on both, finishing off your previous camp. The most common way this advanced mechanic is used is when you're going from blue to wolves. A lot of champions have a dash ability that lets them get to blue, pulling wolves towards them and then AoEing both camps at the same time, finishing off the wolves. Now let's move on to the smiting mechanic. A common question players have is when should they be using smite, especially in their opening clears? So the general rules are as follows. If you get no leash or a really weak leash, you'll always smite the first camp you start at. This will let you hit level 2 faster, which increases your overall clear time since you do more damage at level 2. If you get a strong leash though, then you want to save your smite for your next camp. If you're starting blue, use the pull mechanic to smite Gromp as you finish blue to save more time. If you're starting red, save smite for the large Krug. It makes it split earlier, letting you clear the camp much faster. Another question players have is when should they be smiting the camp itself? Do you smite it as soon as possible or wait till you smite to last hit it? This can be champion specific. Be aware of what abilities you have that do damage based on current or missing health. For example, the second portion of Lee Sin's Q is an execute based on missing health. For Lee Sin players, it's best to smite early to get maximum damage on his Q ability, since on larger camps you'll end up getting 2 Qs off before it dies. For Viego players though, his Q passive makes his autos do damage based on the target's current health. So in that case, you would want to save your smite to basically last hit the camp for maximum speed. Now, for champions that don't have this specific interaction, you want to follow this general rule. If you have no threat of being invaded, you actually want to smite a little bit before the camp dies. For example, at the start of the game, smite does 600 true damage. Remember what we taught you earlier. You can kite camps out of their patience range at around 300 health. So a nice trick is to either smite early at 900 HP, then begin your kite outside of the patience range, or you kite early at 900 HP and then smite at 600. Either way, just realize if you're sitting there and smiting at 600 HP, not kiting to your next camp, you're losing a lot of time in your clear. Now, when it comes to smiting objectives to either secure them or steal them, there's just a few mechanics you need to know. First is the basics, knowing how much damage your smite does. At the start of the game, your smite does 600 true damage. Then, once your pet has consumed 20 treats, it upgrades to do 900 true damage. Once your pet has consumed 40 treats, it upgrades once again to do 1200 true damage. Next is to then combine this smite damage with one of your abilities. For example, let's say you're playing Graves. Well, what you do is while you're autoing the objective, take note of how much damage each auto attack is doing. You then add that damage number to your smite damage to know the new health value to smite at. Then, once the monster drops below that health level, you auto attack and smite right at the same time to combine the damage. At its core, this is all you have to do to smite well. Identify an ability or auto attack that does a lot of damage, get a good estimate of the damage value, add that to your smite damage, and combine the two at the same time at the new health range to smite. Now, here's the problem. Some champions are going to have way better abilities to combine with smite. Like we talked about earlier, the second portion of Lee Sin's Q is an execute based on missing health. So, if something like Dragon is getting low and the enemy Lee Sin lands that first Q on it, you want to stop damaging it, since Lee Sin will have that Q smite combo that will likely outsmite you. Another example is Blue Kayn. With his E ability, he's able to stay in walls and basically always try a smite steal. At the same time, his W will hit like an absolute truck, making for a very safe and easy smite steal attempt, where he just Ws into smite and most junglers can't actually outsmite that. Now, to be clear, in a real game, it's usually much messier than just doing it in a practice tool. For example, here I'm on Graves going for a smite steal. I have no way of autoing anything beforehand to know my exact damage. I also have crit chance, so I can't know if I'm going to crit or not on my next auto. So I have to do my best to estimate. My smite does 1200 true damage at this point. If the Dragon gets anywhere between 1200 and 1600, I think I could smite steal with an auto and smite combo. You can see it drop below 1600 health, so I then flash to smite steal. But you can see after my auto, it's at 1287. I was 87 damage off. However, at that exact tick, someone else damaged it, putting it below 1200 right as I smite steal. And if you're wondering why I didn't just ult instead of my auto attack to try and steal, well, I was saving that to get back out of the pit after. Anyways, the point is, it's not an exact science when you're the one going for the steal, since you won't know an exact number. Now, if you're the one securing the objective instead, while you're doing the objective, you should be choosing which ability you're going to combine with your smite. Then, early on when you start the objective, use that ability and look at the damage it does. Then, add that to your smite damage to get an exact number you're going to be smiting at. Alright, next let's talk about the mechanics you need to speed up how fast you actually damage your camps. First, for any champion that has an ability that locks them out of auto attacking, you should weave these in between the natural rhythm of your auto attacks. For example, auto, ability, auto on many champions will lead to nice smooth camp clears without losing any DPS from auto attacks. Any ability that interrupts your auto attack should be used in this way. Secondly, abilities that reset your auto attack come into play when your champion has an empowered auto attack. These will directly change the rhythm that you attack in because they will alter the start and end points of your animations. Make sure when using these that you allow your auto attack to finish releasing before using the ability. Even if your ability comes up at the start of your auto attack, it's going to be more efficient to wait just to get one more auto in, as most of your damage will be coming from your basic attacks. The next thing to be on the lookout for are abilities that have animations you can combine together. This reduces the amount of time they're stuck in their cast animation and to fit multiple abilities between auto attacks. For example, on Kha'Zix, you'd want to use Q and W together during the camp clear to increase DPS. If we simply use one ability between each auto attack, we would have to do something like auto, Q, auto, W, auto. This means that our W would be up for longer not being used, which causes us to lose DPS and clear slower. Instead, we can cancel our W animation wind down with Q and fit both within our auto attack window, meaning we can do auto, WQ auto, getting more spells within the same amount of time. You should also be aware of animation cancels on mobility spells. The most famous example is Kayn, where if you Q point blank into a wall, it's going to cast way faster than if you use it regularly. A more advanced example of this is with Graves, where with the right angle you can basically completely cancel the E animation while still getting the auto reset. The last spell optimization to be aware of is to not treat your jungle clear as individual camp speedruns. Sometimes you need to make a decision that will slow down the time it takes to kill one camp, but leads to an overall faster clear because it saves more time on a future camp. If you can't pull the next camp towards you, you're gonna have to walk the entire distance, which can really slow you down. Obviously, going over terrain saves a lot of walking time, and because of this, you can sacrifice DPS on one camp to make up for it with movement efficiency getting to the next. For example, even though Jarvan could E here to increase damage on his red buff, it will be more efficient to have his EQ up to dash to Krugs to save the hassle of walking around. If he just used E right away, he would not have it up after killing red, meaning any DPS he gains now by using it, he simply loses, and more by having to walk to Krugs. For champions with high cooldown abilities with low damage, it can mean not using that ability at all on a camp even though it's up, just to save more time by using it to get to the next camp instead. Now, this entire time we've been focused on optimizing how we clear camps. That's only one part of the game. A huge skill junglers have to master is reading the map and knowing what lanes they should be ganking. This is where the mechanic of F key cycling comes in. If you watch any pro player or challenger stream, you'll notice them quickly cycle their camera across their teammates to get insane map vision super fast. Without F key cycling, you'll have to first look at the minimap, then identify where your teammates actually are, then move your cursor very accurately to click on them. And if at any point you miss slightly, you'll have to take time to adjust the camera, and in the end, it just takes an insane amount of time. Now, there's actually a secret to setting this up like the pros. Go to settings, hotkeys, and camera control, rebind select ally 1, 2, 3, and 4 to the respective F keys as shown. You have to do this because by default, F1 is bound to yourself, which is what you already use your spacebar for. Now, here's the thing, the F keys on your keyboard are notoriously awkward and difficult to hit. A lot of players just find them too uncomfortable, especially if they have smaller hands. If you have this problem, we highly recommend trying out rebinding them to Z, X, C, and V. The nice thing about this is that if you rest your pinky finger on your shift key like a lot of players do, it's really easy to just slide your pinky over to the Z key, put the rest of your fingers on X, C, and V, and then just hit them in sequence, with your thumb hitting spacebar at the end to return to yourself. Now, here's the thing, some people find F key cycling to make checking lanes easier, some find it awkward and prefer using their mouse. At the end of the day, either way is fine. The most important thing is you're actually checking your lanes. Here's how to check your lanes whether you're F key cycling or using your mouse in a real game. The first step is you'll be checking nearby lanes in between camps. So, once we finish red, we can input a movement command to our next camp. Krugs. We no longer need to watch our champion, so now we check both top and mid since these are the lanes closest to us. This is a habit you want to develop for each camp. As soon as you're done clearing, click to the next camp, then check your nearby lanes either with F key cycling or your mouse. Now, the next step is checking lanes while doing camps. This is tougher, however, there's a trick to it. You want to time checking your lanes right after you've put all your abilities on cooldown. For example, here we get to Raptors, we auto, E for the auto reset, and now with no abilities needed to be cast, we check our nearby lanes before jumping back to ourselves. Shortly after, our Q and E are coming up, so we Q, auto, E to auto reset, now we can check nearby lanes again. In this case, only checking mid if we have a transition gank available before heading to our wolves. And now that we're moving between camps, we can check lanes since we have nothing else to do. You should also be aware, another trick is to pay attention to health bars above the map. Often when one of your teammates is low on health, it means the enemy will be too, and can be a signal to check that lane if it's gankable. Additionally, always be aware of player icons overlapping on the minimap. When this happens, 99% of the time a trade or all-in is happening, and so it's a signal to check that lane to see if it's worth peeling off a camp or just heading straight for that lane after you're done with the current one. And lastly, you need to know how to count jungle CS. Each jungle camp is worth 4 CS. Whether it's a Gromp or a Krug camp, clearing a camp adds 4 to your CS total on the scoreboard. What this means is that if you spot an enemy jungler, you can hit tab and check their CS. This is something you should do the first time you see the enemy jungler to confirm their route. In this case, it's obvious Shyvana is level 4, which means she had to have full cleared, but just to show you how it works, we hit tab, see she has 24 CS. Each camp is worth 4 CS, so when you add up all 6 camps of a full clear, it equals 24. The reason this is useful is let's say we saw Shyvana earlier on this ward and she was still level 3, meaning she didn't full clear. If we hit tab and saw she had 20 CS, well, that means she's cleared 5 camps with her 1 camp left, likely being the Krug camp. The Krug camp is super far off the map, so not exactly easy for us to steal. However, if we hit tab and saw she had 16 CS, then she only cleared 4 camps, and the 2 camps left could be Krugs and Raptors. This would be useful to know since her Raptors could be a good camp to try and attack once we finish our clear, as it's easy to access. Counting CS is usually most useful though when junglers are pathing opposite to each other. For example, let's say I start red and the enemy is Lee Sin and starts at his red. Let's say I get to my top side. I see Lee Sin execute a really early gank bot side. Move my camera and see he has double buffs, then hit tab and check his CS. He only has 12. Well, since he has double buffs, that means he's killed his red and blue. That's 8 CS, and so he's only killed 1 more camp. This guarantees either his Raptors or Krugs are still alive, possibly both. So, since we path to opposite sides, after I finish my full clear, I can move into his jungle looking to steal one of these camps before he's able to get there in time to defend it. Okay, now let's pivot our attention to talking about some important mechanics around epic monsters like Baron, Rift Herald, and Dragon. The only thing you need to know for Baron is that it has a passive called Baron's Gaze. Baron Nashor takes 50% reduced damage for 8 seconds from the unit that it has most recently hit with a basic attack, being effective only against 1 unit at a time. This means you never want high DPS champions tanking Baron's auto attacks. I see this mistake all the time. Instead, your lowest damage and ideally decently tanky champion should be most in front to aggro Baron's basic attacks and take the debuff. For the Rift Herald, there's a few different mechanics you need to know. Firstly, Rift Herald also has a Gaze debuff, where the unit she most recently attacked will deal 50% reduced damage to it. Secondly, when Rift Herald's eye is closed, it lasts for 10 seconds, but will be reduced by 2.5 seconds every time she's struck by a champion's basic attack. The eye cannot open more than once every 3 seconds though. This means doing Rift Herald by yourself is always going to take significantly longer. And thirdly, hitting the eye in the back does 12% of the Rift Herald's max health as true damage. Usually, this will deal around 1200 damage to the Herald, so if you don't have Smite and are worried about it being stolen, you can actually purposely keep the eye alive and then hit it at 1200 HP to prevent being Smite stolen. You can also use our previous tip about combining Smite by then adding your Smite damage on top of the 1200 eye damage. Typically, your Smite will be dealing 900 damage when the Herald is alive. So, when the eye opens, you can leave it until around 2100 health, then hit the eye and smite it at the same time to secure it. Now, our last 2 mechanics are quick, simple, and effective. Firstly, as you send movement commands around the map, you need to be switching that to an attack move command instead. This is because as a jungler, you're going to be the one most often running past control wards. I can't even begin to tell you how common it is for junglers to be running through brushes, they move their camera to check a lane, only to run past a control ward not realizing they were just spotted. You can even use this trick with your sweeping lens too, where you activate it, then simply send an attack move command, and if you move your camera, you'll still clear any wards that you spot. And finally, there's a mechanic you absolutely must know called residual vision. When a yellow ward is cleared, vision in the area lasts for an entire 2 seconds, much longer than players realize. This allows you to see the direction of the enemy after they clear your ward, but disinformation is one of the best ways to win a war, so you should actively look to trick your opponents, make it seem like you're going one way, when in reality, you've gone the complete opposite way once the residual vision is over. You should also be aware that this 2-second window of vision persists even if it was revealed by a control ward. And speaking of control wards, this 2 seconds of residual vision is not a thing when it comes to control wards. When a control ward is cleared, vision deactivates immediately. This is also true for Farsight wards, the blue ones. So just remember, control ward equals no residual vision when cleared, and yellow ward equals 2 seconds of residual vision. And lastly, if a ward simply expires when an enemy is nearby instead of being cleared, then there's no residual vision at all. A yellow ward needs to actually be cleared for that residual vision to take place. Now, if you've been stuck at your current rank as a jungler, Skill Capped is what you've been looking for. We just released the best jungle course on the entire internet. Literally, it's 5 whole chapters teaching you everything you need to know to climb ranks fast as a jungler. This is around 3 hours of content where you'll be walked through step by step how to carry as a jungler from the start of the game to the end. Pair that with our new champion clear course that teaches you the fastest way to clear on your champion, and trust me, you're going to be climbing through the ranks in no time. Best part, you can try all of this risk-free. If you don't rank up while actively using Skill Capped, you'll get your money back, no questions asked. You can unlock all of this through the exclusive discount you can only access through the link below. So, what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below to get the rank you've always wanted. Alright, and that will do it for this one. We here at Skill Capped want to thank you for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.
There's There's a massive problem with educational content for junglers on YouTube. The problem started when most channels, including ours, would simply analyze other pro junglers to try and teach you how to carry. But this content had an obvious issue. You're not playing with other challenger players who actually listen to pings, understand what to do with priority, rotate to dragon, and follow up on ganks. So content pivoted the opposite way. Challenger players, including myself, these days we go smurf in low elo to show you how to carry. Typically you'll hear stuff like just full clear, play for yourself, take every kill, and so on. But this of course runs into yet another problem. A challenger player prioritizing gold on themselves will win every game because they just have insane mechanics. If you go try the advice, it's often going to feel like you're just farming camps, getting out ganked, and losing every objective. The advice basically boils down to just 1v9 bro. So here's what I'm going to give you in this video. Actual practical advice that genuinely works. I've developed a super simple 3-step process for improving faster as a jungler. And to prove it, we took one of our World of Warcraft players, someone who hadn't played a single game of rank before this year, and we brought him into the League of Legends team. We basically said, hey, we're going to coach you until you hit Diamond. His name is Zot, and most importantly, he is like most of you watching this video. He has a full-time job at Skillcap, working on the back-end type of things. He has a wife, and on top of that, a RuneScape addiction. He's always telling me about some AFK farm he's doing or whatever. The point is, League isn't his entire life, and it doesn't have to be yours either, and we didn't have him take any shortcuts either. When coaching students, challengers always tell them, just play Diana, Amumu, Nocturne, or Fiddlesticks. The reason why these champions are recommended is because all you do is AFK full clear, make a play when your ultimate is up, then go back to full clearing. And to be fair, it works. But we didn't want to teach that. We made Zod play a variety of junglers, including Jarvan, Viego, and Lee Sin. Champions where if you AFK farm, you will lose. I will say though, he was a bit of a meta abuser picking Zed towards the end of the climb, but as you can see, he hit Diamond playing a pretty decent variety of junglers. Our goal is to make sure that no matter what you prefer to play, our advice will help you, and we made sure to document every single coaching moment at Skillcapped if you actually want to follow along and improve. But for now, let's start with our very first lesson, and it's the most important one. After watching and coaching low elo for years, my biggest takeaway is that most of the gameplay just feels sluggish. When I watch a low elo game, I feel like I'm almost not even watching League of Legends. Everyone is moving in slow motion. To explain what I mean, there's a really tedious task I do only when I want to coach jungle players. I sit down with them and I painstakingly count every single second of wasted time. It starts recalling at 421 or 420, so it's 13 seconds. So at 4:07 he was here, he could have walked over here for like 3 seconds and recalled at 4:10. Instead he recalled at 4:20, so he wasted 10 seconds. What's really tedious to do about this process is that it's just counting 1 to 2 seconds multiple times. Okay, yeah. Leash it, wasting like, I don't know why he's waiting forever. So we'll knock off another 2 seconds there.
Yep.
Q. Nice. Okay, he should just already be moving, should be finishing the camp like over here. So screw it, 3 seconds. Obviously, this is never going to be a 100% accurate representation of how much time is being wasted, but it's a close enough estimation for the point we're making here. And luckily for me, Zot was getting into it as well.
You also have to add a couple of seconds because you didn't use his Q from base, right?
Oh, dang, okay. After 20 minutes, I felt like the point was made, and I want you to take a wild guess. From the start of the game until the 20-minute mark, how much total time do you think we added up that Nocturne wasted? In just 20 minutes, this jungler had wasted 250 seconds, or a little over 4 minutes of game time. And to be precise, we started counting at 1:30 when camp spawned, so less than 20 minutes. This isn't a one-of occurrence either. Every single time I've done this in the past, the result is always around 4 to 5 minutes. Think about that. The average gold elo jungler is effectively doing nothing for around 20 to 25% of the game. That is so many ganks, objectives, recall timers, scuttle crabs, and more just wasted, and it's all because you're playing slow. You may as well just be standing in the fountain, mindlessly scrolling through your phone for a huge portion of the game. Now, you may think this doesn't apply to you. There's no way you're that slow or time inefficient, right? But a harsh truth is that if you weren't, you wouldn't be in that elo in the first place. But that's actually good news for you though, and that's how I got Zod to power through the early ranks so quickly. Being more efficient efficient with your time is such a simple thing to fix that will give you far better results than almost anything else you can work on. To be fair to low elo junglers, I have noticed that there's one way that they almost always try to be more efficient in, and that's in their initial clear. I guarantee 99% of you at some point have looked up your specific champion starting clear on YouTube, and this is a great start. In fact, if you've mastered your first clear, you have an overwhelming advantage over everyone else at the start of the game. The reason this is so impactful is if you think about it, let's say both junglers decide to path to top lane at the beginning of the match, like in this game from Zot. I taught him the importance of these early clears, that if you're there just a little bit earlier, you might be able to get the gank off before the enemy jungler is even able to help. Then your top laner is happy with you and probably helps you at the scuttle fight. Just from learning how to clear a little bit faster in the early game, Zot has already guaranteed himself a massive lead this game. And that's why we always keep a course with the updated world record clears for every meta jungler, so you always have this advantage. But I feel like that's where most of the efficiency for low elo junglers ends, and this is a problem. Let's say you got a lead like the one we just mentioned. I want you to think about time efficiency like this. If being time efficient let you get a gank off that you normally wouldn't have, you got gold, which turns into more items, which means you're stronger. Your time now has more value. The stronger your champion is, the more value your time has. What this means is that being efficient with your time is even more important, which will get you bigger leads, which then makes your time more valuable again, which then turns, and you kind of get the point. Time efficiency is so important. I want you to watch this clip from a rank 1 jungler. He doesn't know what to buy and kind of messes around in the shop for a bit, and he physically cringed at wasting like 3 seconds. Now before I lose you, don't think you need to sweat out of your mind every game to win. Remember how I said you're likely wasting 4 to 5 minutes every game? That's by challenger standards. All you need to do is save maybe around 2 minutes compared to other junglers in your elo, and you would improve dramatically. Just by doing that alone, you would likely increase your elo by an entire rank. This is what I drilled into Zot constantly. In every single VOD review and live coaching session, I was always calling him out when he was slow and telling him ways to fix it. Being faster is by far the most important thing you can work on, and it's why it was our very first lesson, and it was relevant all the way until he got diamond. Now, where the biggest time sink is for most players is simply in how they kill the jungle, not just on your initial clear. It's very odd that I feel like I see a lot of low elo junglers care about their opening route, but they just stop caring after that entirely. For example, I don't think I almost ever see junglers play with a camp's patience in low elo, even though that is a huge time saver. To be fair, I do understand that it can be very stressful to kill a camp at its max patience. When you drag a camp out of its leash range, that bar looks like it starts dropping really fast, and there is nothing worse than having a camp reset, especially in a ranked game. But if you didn't know, a camp's patient bar lasts a total of 4 seconds, and 4 seconds is a really long time. In fact, a really simple tip that will immediately speed up your clear is the following. If a camp is low enough to where an AoE ability would kill it, and it has a 4-second cooldown remaining, you can just move on to the next camp. Your spell is guaranteed to be up before its patience runs out, letting you speed up your clear significantly. To put into perspective how useful that is, think about how often you cycle your jungle every game. That tip alone might save you around 15 seconds or so per clear. So in just 4 cycles of clearing your camps, you've saved an entire minute of game time from that single tip. That's 1 or 2 extra ganks. Maybe an objective you had time to solo. You could play the exact same way, change nothing about your decision making, and you'd already be a much better player. That's why I personally believe our Ultimate Jungle Clear course is the best source of information on the internet to help you immediately improve at jungling. It teaches you, start to finish, all the little concepts that challengers use to speed up their clears. Not only that, but it even shows you how to combine all those concepts, making your clear so much faster than everyone else in your elo. That's on top of our world's record course that we have for every meta jungler I mentioned earlier, and of course, the main dish here, the entire journey of how I coach Zot to diamond. There, you'll be able to explore just how easily Zot achieved his goal by following super simple and practical advice that anyone can use to succeed in solo queue. You'll see he really is just winning games by doing the simplest things possible that I'm going to teach in the rest of this video. And while that's already a ton of content to help you improve, you'll also get access to another 5-chapter course that teaches you every little other fundamental I may have missed when coaching Zot. If you want to learn everything there is to learn about jungling, those 5 chapters are amazing, and our subscribers love them for good reason. Best of all, it's all backed by our rank up guarantee. If you don't rank up while actively using skill cap, you just get your money back. That's how confident we are that we have the best jungling courses on the internet. So make sure to use the discount link below after this video to sign up. Alright, now that we've sped up our clear, I'm going to give you a few rules that I force Zot to follow every single game. A couple of things first though. These rules are mostly here to make sure you don't ever dilly-dally around in the jungle. I just spent a while ranting about how wasting time is bad. The biggest problem junglers face is that it's a role where there's so much to do that it is very easy to get baited around by your team, spam pinging you, or you see a juicy gank that you want to go for, and so on. Basically, these rules are here to keep you grounded. You don't know what to do? Just follow the rules. Secondly, these are things you've probably heard of before if you watch educational jungle videos, but these rules will not win you a game of League of Legends. We'll cover the rules first, but I will make sure to perfectly guide you so that you know how to break them and take over games consistently. Rule number 1, the thing every jungle coach will repeat 1,000 times, just full clear before you do anything. It's straightforward. You can divide your time into 2 sections, clear time and free time. While your camps are up, it's clear time. Just kill the camps and get gold and experience. Then you'll have free time to do whatever you want. Gank, do an objective, base, doesn't really matter. Just depends on the game, of course. But keep in mind that free time ends when your camps respawn, so you go back to clearing. A quick note is that if you've tried full clearing before and it feels bad to do, keep in mind that you will have way more free time if you follow our first lesson to clear faster. This is why full clearing looks so OP when challengers do it in low elo, because they breeze through the jungle and they have so much time to impact the map. Also, it is super important that you do not gank during your clear time, unless the gank has an 80% chance or higher of working. So if you see bot lane pinging assistance, but it doesn't really seem like you're gonna get a kill, you do not go. Keep clearing your jungle. It is very simple and straightforward. Clear time is clear time, unless there is something absolutely crazy going on. Rule number 2, be at your camps as they respawn. I'm sure you've all heard of the 420 timer by now, which is when your first camp respawns after your initial clear. Ideally, what you want to do is end your free time right as your first camp is about to respawn. This way you clear the camps as they're spawning in a line, which has a couple of benefits. Doing so almost guarantees you're efficiently farming. The more often you cycle your jungle, the more gold and experience you get. Secondly, it keeps your jungle safe. A huge problem with letting all of your camps respawn before clearing them is that it leaves your jungle vulnerable. For example, let's say I base and my entire jungle is up. If I go clear my top side, that entire time my bot side is exposed. So by the time I get there, all of my camps might be gone. The benefit of clearing your camps as they're respawning is that it makes it almost impossible for your jungle to be stolen. There's almost no time for you to be invaded, which means it's impossible to fall behind. Now, of course, you don't have to be this precise in a real game. As long as you're at your camps within 10 to 20 seconds of them spawning, you're probably doing well. And rule number 3, quadrant clearing. Sometimes, for whatever reason, you're gonna need to deviate from your full clear. Maybe you see that the enemy jungler is about to tower dive your bot lane and you need to be there. That's fine, but always kill every single camp in a quadrant of the jungle before leaving that quadrant. In my lessons with Zot, I ran through a lot of issues that ignoring this rule can cause, but the main thing is that it just screws up your clear in the long run. Let's say you were on Krugs and you decided to gank bottom. The problem is that you now have to walk all the way back to your Raptors. A lot of players don't think about how terrible it is to spend time doing nothing, where you're just walking to another area of the map. You want to minimize your time wasted, but that isn't the main issue. The problem is that when I come back to my respawning Krugs later, my Raptor camp is now desynced from them. So now I'm in a cycle where all of my camps are spawning at different times, which feels bad because it lowers your farm, experience, and so on. So again, rule number 3, if you enter a quadrant of the jungle, kill every camp in it and then go do something else. Of course, following this rule might cause you to miss a kill sometimes or get flamed by your teammates, but League is a percentages game. 80% of the time, clearing your quadrant is good, and 20% of the time, it might feel a little bad. Okay, those rules are simple and easy to follow, and they're tips you've likely heard before, but those rules are not what got Zot to Diamond. Knowing when to break them is. And to understand our next concept a little easier, I do want to compare climbing in League to something like fitness, which I think is something most people know about these days. And if you're like me, your algorithm won't stop showing you these three guys over and over again. If you want to get fit, all you have to do is go to the gym 2 to 3 times a week, eat a good amount of protein, do your 10,000 steps every day or whatever. If you do that, you would be in better shape than 99% of people just by doing that. League, in a funny way, is fairly similar. If you want to be Emerald, you simply have to be in the top 10% of players. Diamond is the top 2.5%. Obviously, it takes time and effort to climb to that elo, but if you compare it to something else like fitness, where the top 1% is easily achievable, it starts to seem a lot more manageable, right? By the way, just know that as I'm high-horsing about fitness right now, if you took that South Park guy, made him Latino, had a sombrero for fun, and like 20 cans of pineapple Fanta all around the desk, that's me. That's who's talking about fitness right now. My problem is that after watching both types of fitness and League content is that they share the same problem, that they make things way more complicated than they actually are. In fitness, you gotta spread out your meals 4 to 5 times a day, creatine, eccentric, pyramid set, reverse pyramid set, blah blah blah. In League, I feel like jungle has it the worst of any other role. Priority, weak side, strong side, objective timings, cross-mapping, and so on. My personal opinion is that these concepts do not matter until you're actually in Diamond. For example, what good does it do to even think about your teammate's priority? Why are you even thinking about what they can do? Trying to predict what your gold elo teammate is going to do with their priority is the biggest waste of time because they don't know what they're going to do with it. The problem I believe most players have, and why it takes so much time to climb, is because everyone is focusing on learning a ton of different concepts at once and overloading themselves with how much they think they have to do. In my opinion, climbing should be about focusing on a few concepts and just becoming really good at them before trying to learn more. So with Zot, I minimized how many things I taught him, and I forced him to focus on the equivalent of eating protein and going to the gym in League. And it is the simplest concept of all. You just need to learn how to reliably kill enemy champions. I swear the player base has gone so macro crazy, and that's partly my fault, that they've forgotten the best win condition in the game is to just score kills. Because if you kill the enemy bot lane, you're probably going to secure dragon for your team. You don't need to force it from priority or anything like that. You just kill bot, get dragon. If you kill mid lane, you're probably gonna have priority for grubs. If you kill the enemy jungler, you can take all of their camps. And if you kill top lane, well, you've probably made that guy rage quit and reconsider all of their life choices. This is why I forced Zot to follow our earlier rules so aggressively. Because farming your camps makes you stronger, and if you're stronger, you can fight. Now, jungle camps make you stronger in 2 different ways, by giving gold and experience, and with those, you obviously level up and buy items. So here's a quick quiz, and no, I'm not trying to trick you. If you are 600 gold away from a core item, and your entire jungle is up, from a scale of 1 to 10, how much value would you place on your jungle camps at the moment? I would have taken any answer 8 and up. Your camps give you guaranteed resources, and by doing them, you would level up, get enough gold for your item, and power spike really hard. Okay, how about this? Let's say I'm walking out of base, and all of my camps are up. I just bought my core item though. I'm basically at 0 gold left, and I'm 0% into my next level. Again, 1 to 10. How valuable are my camps right now? Any low number would have been correct here. Even if I were to kill all of my camps, I wouldn't have gotten any stronger, so they have very little value to me right now. And that brings me to the final piece of the puzzle, the most important concept to climbing as a jungler. Your role can do whatever you want to be doing at all times. Laners are stuck with the responsibility of having to catch waves and protect their towers. They can't just do whatever they want. They have very strict recall timers, and they have very small windows to leave their lane and roam. On the other hand, as a jungler, you don't have any responsibilities that affect you personally. So while you basing in a bad time maybe loses you an objective, or maybe your top laner gets stove, it doesn't put you behind in any way. What this means is that you can always do what you want on the map, and this is how I got Zot to destroy low elo. Basically, I taught him the ebb and flow of how your matches should go. While your camps have high value, like we discussed earlier, you should follow our rules. Then, while your camps have close to no value and you're on a power spike, you go look for fights, and that is it. All you need to do is track your power spikes diligently. Like I said, you don't have any responsibilities. Right now, Zot sees he has a good base, so he just recalls whenever he wants. Then, after basing on a good spike, you just build the habit of pressing tab. Then, compare how strong you are to everyone else. Zot is kind of even with the enemy Darius, but he hasn't based yet to spend his gold. So all Zot has to do is follow my basic rule. If you power spiked and your camps have no value, just go fight. And he just one-shots the guy. You might think that playing on a power spike is such a simple thing that there's no way it could get you to diamond, but the reason it's so effective is because most players' attention is split between so many different concepts. They're thinking, oh, dragon is spawning soon, I need to be here to establish vision, or my bot side is being pushed in and I need to go counter or whatever. So while most players think that they play around power spikes, they're really not doing it as well as I taught Zot to. Low elo junglers are so distracted by so many things going on in the map that they're not doing the single most important thing in League. Meanwhile, I've taught Zot that this is basically the only thing that matters. Here's another example from one of his games, but with me live coaching him this time. Before starting though, just look at the enemy Viego. He is having a better game than Zot. Let's just play the clip though.
Viego hasn't based. You could actually just go to his Raptors right now. Better ignore wolves, ignore wolves, ignore.
Oh.
Yeah, there's action on the map, and Viego hasn't based. So you want to fight right now. Good, well played.
I can.
Yeah, just contest everything here. I'm gonna let you do your thing, but you want to fight aggressively here.
Not off to a good start.
Nice. Think about his red. Got it. You're stronger.
I tried to kick him into that guy.
No.
Would have been stylish there.
So that's all of that rule we talked about. It happens early in the game too. You just base, you just bought items, you just leveled up, skip your camps, go brawl to the death.
Like I said, most low elo junglers aren't playing around this concept. That Viego is probably sitting on like 2,000 gold during this play, but he willingly took a fight down in items and a level. Zot basically 1v2'd him and Yunara here, even with that questionable kick. And that is the main thing I failed to neglect in this video. Zot's mechanics are so bad, and I still managed to get him to diamond easily by following a few simple concepts. And the best part about both of those plays we saw is what I like to tell junglers. You don't need to worry about objectives. If you just kill the enemy players, you're probably going to get the objectives for free anyway. You don't need teamwork to do it. I can't emphasize how simple and effective this is to do. Everyone else is focusing on way too many things. Meanwhile, Zot is just eating his protein, going to the gym, and having way better results than everyone else. And that is my 3-step process for quickly climbing as a jungler. 1. Play fast and don't waste any time. 2. Follow our clearing rules to make sure you're always strong. And 3. Then you fight when you're strong, and only when you're strong. Of course, there is a little more nuance to these concepts that can make them even more effective, but as I mentioned, every other lesson I've taught Zot that I didn't have time to cover here is all in our Bronze to Diamond weekly courses. There, you'll get to see Zot's progress week by week following the simple advice I've taught here and how effective it is. I also taught him some other critical concepts that are much more relevant in low elo, such as how to go for natural plays, then how to actually play around low elo priority with teammates who don't look at the map, and so much more. And on top of that, remember, we've got the world record clear for every meta jungler on top of the jungle clearing course for the rest of the game, so you know how to outpace everyone in your elo bracket. And it's all backed by our rank up guarantee. If you don't climb a full rank following our advice, you get your money back. No questions asked. So if you want the fastest and most reliable way to get the rank you want with the best jungling courses on the internet, sign up with the discount link below. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.
An enemy has been slain. An ally has been slain.
In this guide, we're going to break down the most important mechanics for you to learn in League of Legends, and make them simple, easy to understand, and easy to implement in your own games. There's a problem right now when it comes to learning mechanics in League. I'm sure you've experienced it yourself. Most guides that you find online teaching mechanics will teach you crazy combos or some unrealistic way of kiting that makes you look really cool but isn't exactly practical. That's why we knew we had to make this video. What we've done is identify the 15 most important mechanics And by important, we mean you'll not only be using these mechanics every single game, but by improving at them, you'll see the biggest increase in your win rate. And no matter what role you play or type of champion or rank you're in, we've made sure to include mechanics for everyone. So even if one of these doesn't apply to you, a ton of them will. So make sure to watch until the end. Also, we have a special limited time offer. We want you to go out and try to implement the mechanics you're about to learn in this video. From there, identify one mechanic that you're struggling with, that you just can't seem to get the hang of, despite trying to implement what we'll teach you in this guide. Then, go to our website. You'll find the full course for this video there. Simply scroll down to the comments section in that course, and we'll have a link to a Google form where you can submit a replay of yours where you struggled with that mechanic. This will also give you the opportunity to ask any questions you have, tell us what about it you're struggling with, and more. We will then be taking your submissions and expanding the course using your replays, where we go into further detail teaching the mechanics you guys struggled with the most. We already have over 2 hours of this additional content live on our website right now. Do keep in mind though, submissions will only be accepted for 1 month after this video goes live, so don't miss your opportunity. And if that wasn't enough to sweeten the deal, we've added a discount link in the description below, so make sure to check it out after this. Alright, so let's get into our first mechanic called spacing. The reason we wanted to start with the spacing mechanic is that it's something that is occurring throughout the entire laning phase and even team fights. It's one of the most important mechanics for every player to master. At the same time, it's one of the mechanics that players find the most confusing due to people overcomplicating it when they teach it. At its core, spacing just means staying outside of the range of the enemy's spells. Let's use Ahri as an example. Her Q has a range of 900, and her E ability, which is her charm, has a range of 1000. And obviously, to start, we will want to use the highest range ability of the opponent as our reference point. So all you have to do is stay outside the range of 1000 against Ahri, and boom, you're a spacing god. Well, not really, but it's what everything else you'll learn is built upon. So most players get this part, like, duh, sit outside of a spell's range, that's common sense. Well, the problem is most players, including yourself, take this way too far. Like literally, you're standing way too far away. For example, let's say we're playing someone like Lux who has a range advantage over Ahri. Lux's E ability has a range of 1100 for context, and remember Ahri's max range is 1000 on her charm. If we stand too far back, well, sure, we're safe from Ahri, but we're also out of the range of our own Lux ability, so we're never going to land damage on Ahri. And this is why when pros and coaches talk about spacing, really what they mean is staying outside of the opponent's range while still being inside your own range. Remember, we know as Lux, we have around an extra 100 range to work with compared to Ahri. So we never want to be too far back or too far forward. It's like there's a Goldilocks zone every champion is trying to play in. And there are several benefits to playing within this Goldilocks zone. Firstly, as we just taught, if you're the one with the range advantage, well then you can freely land harass from safety. Secondly, spacing properly can easily bait skill shots to waste the enemy's mana and get big timing windows when their abilities are on cooldown. For example, here's the pro player Chovy on Viktor against Ahri. Now, Viktor only has one ability that outranges Ahri, it's his laser, which has a max range of 1050. But here's the thing about Viktor's laser, it is notoriously bad early on. It does very little damage, has an insanely high cooldown, and costs way too much mana. So early on this will effectively reduce his range to his Q, which is only 600. So how do we combat this range deficit as Viktor in this matchup? Well, we can actually use spacing. All you have to do is what Chovy does here. Sit right outside of that maximum range of the enemy, so in this case it's Ahri with 1000 range, then just move slightly inside that 1000 range, then immediately click back out of it. Here's the key to this. You're not actually reacting to any skill shots or anything the enemy is doing. You're always preemptively clicking back out of their range. From the enemy's point of view, you'll see an enemy walking directly at them within their range, but by the time that registers in their brain and they cast their abilities, you've already preemptively clicked back out of their range. This not only makes them waste their mana, but more importantly, it will give you a large timing window while that ability is on cooldown to move up and land abilities of your own that are in that lower range. So now you're probably thinking, okay, so you're expecting me to learn every single range of every single ability in the game on every single champion. That does not sound very simple. To put this in perspective, if you wanted to learn only 50% of the champions, that's like 80 champions total. And with 3 basic abilities per champion, that's 240 ability ranges you would need to memorize. That's insane and totally unrealistic. So don't worry, there are some tips that we're going to teach you that will make practicing and learning spacing way easier. Firstly, you need to understand that each role will have certain champions you face way more often, and you want to focus on those champions first. Take mid lane for example. on the current patch that this guide was made, if we sort by pick rate and just learn the ranges of the 6 most picked mid laners, which are Sylas, Victor, Zed, Katarina, Yasuo, and Yone, you've now learned 52.9% of the matchups that you'll ever face in mid lane. So I'm sure you're starting to see where I'm going with this. Those 240 abilities you thought you had to memorize just to learn 50% of matchups is more like 18. At the same time, not every ability needs to be memorized, only the high threat ones. For example, Sylas is deceptively high range as a melee champion. His main poke, his Q ability, has a range of 955, and it has an engage range of 1200 on his E. In reality though, his E will get blocked by minions, so as long as you have minions protecting you, you just need to memorize that 955 range. And you know what champions this sounds a lot like? Ahri. Her Q range is 900, Sylas's is 955. Ahri's E range is 1000, Sylas's is 1200. Both of these champions actually have very similar playstyles in lane. They will try to use their Q for poke, getting you low to set up the all-in. They then have to land a skill shot, their E ability, which is longer range and gets blocked by minions, in order to then get the kill. This is the trick to learning a ton of matchups super fast. You just start with the most popular champion you'll face. In this case, it was Sylas. Then you'll realize, oh, Ahri is just kind of a slightly shorter range version of Sylas, so you just adjust your spacing to be ever so slightly closer. There are a lot of tricks like this to make ranges of champions more simplified. Another great one is when a champion has ranges on multiple abilities that overlap. A great example of this is Zed. He may seem very overwhelming to face with all of his abilities and how he has mobility, but in reality, he has one combo he uses. He casts W, which is a shadow, then his E to damage you and slow you, which then sets up him landing his Q. Well, guess what? That W and E combo has a range of 940. At the same time, his Q range is 925. So it actually becomes very easy to space against him once you realize as long as you're outside of 940 range, you really can't do anything. Again, use that trick we taught you earlier to weave in and out of that 940 range, and suddenly you have Zed putting his W, E, and Q on cooldown to literally do 0 damage. Oh, and by the way, his W has an insanely high cooldown early on of 20 seconds, so you can easily counterattack safely during that time. This is pretty much a lane-winning trick. And just like that, with Zed and Sylas being in 24.1% of your games on this patch, you've had to literally only learn one range for each of them, and you'll be spacing like a god in 1/4 of every game you play. And still, with all these tips, spacing can still be tough to learn, and it's because visualizing the range of spells in-game can be hard, but there's actually a trick to this too. All you have to do is use your own spell's range as reference. So, for example, Zoe's Sleepy Bubble has a range of 800. Let's say you're playing Victor as an example. Well, his W also has a range of 800. So all you have to do, if you're Victor facing a Zoe, is pull up the range indicator on your W to remind yourself how far you need to be standing. And it doesn't always have to be that exact. For example, we all know how annoying Vladimir with this Q spam can be. Well, Vladimir's Q range is 600. And guess what? The most popular auto attack range for ranged champions is 550. So if you're playing Ahri into Vladimir, well, you know Ahri's auto attack range is 550. So all you have to do in that matchup, if you're Ahri, is to bring up your range indicator every so often. This way, you can remind yourself of where you need to stand. The key here is to just stand a little bit further away than the range indicator shows. This is because Vlad's Q range is 600, while your auto attack range will be 550. So that's pretty much everything you ever need to understand to begin mastering the mechanic of spacing. And this also makes a great transition to our next mechanic, auto spacing. And surprise, as the name implies, it's basically using what you just learned about spacing, but with your auto attacks instead. There's a very famous clip of the pro player Deft using this mechanic of auto spacing to completely outplay his opponent. And don't get me wrong, it's super impressive, it looks really cool, but honestly, it kind of makes auto spacing look way harder than it actually is. Here's the core thing you need to understand. The reason why auto spacing is different than regular spacing is because of how champions move differently when auto attacking compared to using spells. For example, if you're playing Orianna, you can cast spells while moving, so I could click to the side and then cast my ability and my movement doesn't change. However, if I try to auto attack as Orianna, my champion will always move in the direction where I issued that auto attack. It's this body language you can read on auto attack commands that makes auto spacing, well, a thing that exists. I'll explain how in a second. But essentially, all you need to know is that abilities can be really inconsistent about visually communicating a command has been issued, whereas with auto attacks, it's always super obvious. Alright, so let's start with the basics on this one. You need to first realize that sending movement commands also communicates visually where the enemy clicked. Notice how wherever I click, my champion immediately looks in that direction and walks towards it. And again, this will also apply to when I auto-attack an enemy. My champion turns to face them, and I move
I didn't
towards them.
realize you could
Once
give
you
that
understand
buff
this,
to yourself.
auto-spacing is incredibly easy to execute. You just need to try and auto-attack an enemy when their body is facing away from you. This works because if they're facing away from you, well, at that moment, their mouse cursor is away from you and can't click back. At the same time, whenever the enemy turns and faces you, well, then it's your time to click away to get out of their auto-attack range, since you now know they tried to issue an attack command on you. This is how this clip of Deft almost looks like a synchronized dance at one point. Deft is just making sure to click on the enemy when they turn away from him, since they can't auto-attack back at that moment. Then, once the enemy turns around, he knows an attack command has been issued by the enemy, and so he now clicks back to get out of range. The main reason why this clip is so impressive is that both Xayah and Kai'Sa have the same auto-attack range of 525. What this means is he's basically using auto-spacing to play like he has a range advantage, when in reality they're exactly even. Now, I know, you're already thinking, that's like inhuman level reaction times. There's no way I can react that fast or click that fast. Well, here's the trick. You're not actually reacting. What you want to react to is the enemy clicking away from you. When you see their champion look away, that's the trigger to issue an attack command on them, since if you land an auto attack at that moment, they can't fight back. However, right after you issue that attack command, you want to preemptively click behind you to move back. This will do two things. First, if you aren't in range to immediately auto attack them, well, it prevents you from just walking forward into their range and taking an even trade. You can see Deft is doing this several times. He's clicking on Kai'Sa and then clicking back preemptively. No auto attack went off because he wasn't in range. That's why it looks like they're dancing, or like Deft has inhuman reaction times. All he's really doing is clicking on Kai'Sa when she looks away, and then follows it up, preemptively clicking behind him. Eventually, Kai'Sa messes up and walks in range too far forward, at which point, he's still doing the same mechanic of just clicking on Kai'Sa when she looks away, and then clicking back preemptively. The difference is, he's now in range to immediately auto-attack, so he can damage her while still preemptively clicking back to dodge her auto-attacks. It's really the same mechanic the entire time. Your only reaction is clicking on the enemy to issue an attack command when the enemy looks away, and then making sure to always preemptively click back after you've issued an attack command on them. And this is actually a perfect transition into our next mechanic that has to do with increasing your auto-attack range. For example, here we see Caitlyn has an auto-attack range of 650, which is 100 higher than Ezreal. And yet, by Caitlyn's second auto-attack, she's well within Ezreal's range, and he can trade back. This is because there's actually a cooldown between your auto-attacks, and attack speed is what accelerates this cooldown. What players don't realize is what happens when your auto-attacks are on cooldown. You can see, Caitlyn initially auto-attacked Ezreal at her maximum attack range, but while her auto-attack is on cooldown, the game will make her walk forward until her auto-attack is off cooldown. And the solution to preventing this is the exact same as the previous mechanic. You need to click back right after issuing an attack command. Then, as your auto-attack comes back off cooldown, you can click on the enemy to issue another attack command and repeat. This will prevent you from walking forward and make sure you're always staying at your maximum attack range. And as you can imagine, when you combine this mechanic with the previous one of timing your auto-attacks when the enemy looks away from you, how you end up easily auto-spacing like that pro player Deft. Alright, for our next section, let's focus on mechanics that will help you dodge enemy skill shots and just move better in general. The first thing you need to immediately start doing better is clicking far closer to your champion. When you click far away from your champion, it makes it incredibly hard to react to skill shots fast enough, as your mouse has to cover so much more distance just to input a movement command in a different direction. Compare this to when you're clicking close to your champion. There's less distance your mouse has to travel if you need to change directions, so you can end up reacting at insanely fast speeds. A lot of players aren't even aware that consciously clicking closer to your champion is a mechanic that all high-level players implement. In your own games, try to imagine a circle around your champion around this big. After analyzing pros, rarely do they exceed past this circle. Your goal is to keep your mouse within this circle when you issue movement commands. You then only move your mouse outside of the circle when you're issuing attack commands, firing skill shots, or panning your camera. And in addition to clicking closer to your champion, you also need to be clicking way more often than you currently are. For example, here's a Braun player on Tryndamere. I want you to pay attention to how often he's clicking with his mouse and issuing movement commands. It should be really obvious that his champion feels very slow and predictable. Now, compare this to a challenger, and you'll notice that they click almost twice as often. Now, let me explain why it's so important to click fast. Let's say you had to move to your left, and you're only allowed 4 mouse clicks. Due to how the game's auto-pathing is programmed, it makes your movement very smooth, and you change directions only 3 times. This kind of smoothness and minimal amount of direction changes makes you incredibly easy to predict and land skill shots on. Compare this to when you can click as many times as you want. It almost looks like you're jittery or glitchy. It makes you very hard to predict and know what your next move is. And since you're clicking far more often, it means if you need to dodge, you'll be able to change direction much faster. Whenever a player has a low amount of clicks in lane, it makes them not only easier to hit with these skill shots, but also just very easy to read on what they want to do. Compare this to a challenger player, and you'll notice it's very hard to get a read on them. They'll feel very jittery, and it's hard to predict whether they're trying to go aggressive or what direction they want to move. Essentially, you should make a conscious effort to click closer to your champion and more often, and you'll immediately see a boost to your mechanical skill. And now that we've covered dodging, let's talk about how to be far more accurate with skill shots. You see, League is three-dimensional in appearance, but it actually operates as a 2D game. There's effectively only an X and Y axis to determine where you're standing. However, there is a Z axis, but it's only visual, and it's for elevation. Even though you can see Lux go up on the Z axis, don't be fooled, it's only visual. You would still need to aim at her original location to actually hit her. This concept of elevation only being visual also applies to high and low ground when landing skill shots in League. Here, Ahri lands her charm when her cursor isn't even on the Lux because she's aiming below her feet. Remember, whenever a champion is elevated in Summoner's Rift, it's a visual trick. The hitbox is always lower than it seems. This is why you actually want to aim below the enemy to compensate for this if they're on high ground. This is again proved here, where you can see when the cursor is much closer to Lux, but placed above, it doesn't land because of the visual illusion. Here's the thing though, the opposite of this is also true when you're the one with the high ground. You will always need to aim above the enemy, as it will miss
So
if
the
you aim
level
at their
cap's
feet.
18.
So to summarize, the rules are, when the enemy is on the high ground, always aim at their feet. When you're the one on the high ground, always aim towards their head. And finally, if you're on even ground with the enemy, just aim at the center of their body. Another high-level mechanic every pro uses to land skill shots is what's called cutting off the angle. For this example, let's just say you're playing Elise and ganking an Ashe AD carry. Most players in this spot make the mistake of throwing out their skill shot way too early. This makes it very easy for the enemy to dodge, since there's so much distance between you and the opponent. It gives them a lot of time to react. Compare this to when you're right on top of the enemy. It doesn't matter how good they are, they can't dodge something that's point blank. And that's the thing, you can actually guarantee that you'll get a point blank skill shot. You just need to be aware of when you're in position to cut off the escape route of the enemy. And there's actually a very easy way to understand this. Let's say Elise and Ashe are next to each other, but Elise is a bit far behind. If both of them move forward in a perpendicular line, assuming both have similar movement speeds, Elise can never catch up to Ashe. However, if Elise takes an angled approach while Ashe walks straight, notice how there will eventually be a point where you're significantly closer to the enemy than before. On top of this, notice how if Ashe then matches Elise's angled approach, we're back to the same scenario as if they're moving straight. Elise can never catch up again. Well, here's the trick. Summoner's Rift doesn't have infinite space. There are boundaries with terrain. So, if you're the one who takes an angled approach and the enemy does the same, well, they eventually just hit a wall and have to walk straight. And as we just demonstrated, if one person takes an angled approach while the other walks straight, there will always be that point where you're extremely close to them. So, to go back to the original example, we know Ashe's escape path is to her tower. All we have to do now is cut off the angle, meaning take an angled approach and be patient. Eventually, you get to a point where you're the closest you can ever be. This is the most ideal time to land your skill shot since it has the least amount of distance to travel and is the hardest to dodge. Now, this sounds simple enough, and it really is, but against tougher opponents, they'll try to counter you, cutting off the angle, by doing random dodges to the side or behind, trying to preemptively dodge your skill shot. The biggest mistake you can make when they do this is to cast your skill shot early on. You see, since they're no longer moving in a straight line, it means you can now guarantee catch up to them. All you have to do is be patient and let them continue to try and preemptively dodge. You'll just gain more and more distance until you're literally right on top of them, and then you just land a point-blank skill shot. I can promise you, if you implement this into your own gameplay, it will make landing skill shots so much easier. And as you get better at it, you can actually start taking it to a higher level where you actually push people into terrain that traps them. The most common example of this technique is this space right here in between the tower and the wall. Once someone walks into this area, they can no longer move effectively side to side and are just a sitting duck. So, whether it's just landing poke or all-inning off of crowd control, you want to look for opportunities to cut off the angle and funnel the enemy into that specific spot, as even if you're a decent distance away from them, they can't actually dodge any skill shots as they are literally stuck between a wall and a tower. Okay, so now let's try and switch focus to mechanics around last-hitting minions. I want you to stick with me here as I want to just highlight how impactful improving your CS by a very small amount can be. So, statistically, the average game duration in Gold is around 30 minutes. Now, a Gold player who mains Ahri will average around 6 CS per minute, which equals to 180 CS on average per game. Now, on average, 1 CS is worth 22 gold. What this means is that around 4,000 of your total gold every game is going to be coming from your CS. Now, let's say you increased your CS per minute by just 1, meaning every minute you farmed 1 additional minion on average. Your average CS per game would go from 180 to 210, and you would earn an additional 620 gold every single game. This is actually more than 2 kills worth of gold for just 1 extra CS over an entire minute. Seems crazy, right? Well, here's what's even crazier. You know what rank averages 7 CS per minute on Ahri? Challenger. Yes, you heard me right. Literally, the gap between last hitting like a gold player and a challenger is only a difference of 1 CS per minute. Keep in mind, a minion wave will spawn every 30 seconds in game. Ignoring cannon minions, that's 12 CS you can achieve every single minute. So, if you're in a lower rank like gold, you're only getting half of what you could be getting. All you have to do is kill 1 more minion every 2 waves, and you would be on par with a challenger. You're probably now thinking, well, improving at last hitting has to be way harder than I thought if the difference is that small,
it was
but
sudden
it
death.
really isn't. The issue isn't their actual mechanical skill, it's just that most players aren't aware of 3 key mechanical tricks that makes last hitting just a lot easier that challenger players utilize. The first one is how tower focus works in League of Legends. When players get shoved under tower, they end up missing a ton of farm they don't need to because they don't understand how tower aggro actually works. Even though towers themselves are huge, their aggro radius is actually quite small. It's located right here. This is the secret spot nobody knows is actually where towers draw aggro from. Whichever minion is closest to the spot will be what the tower focuses next. So the next time you're shoved under your turret, simply look at this spot. Then identify which minion is closest to this point of aggro, and then you can prepare your last hits accordingly. The second one is about making the timing of your last hits far easier. You need to realize that what makes last hitting hard is that as a range champion, you'll be throwing out a missile that takes time to travel to minions. However, the travel time will change based on the distance of the minion. This is the hardest part about last hitting, timing the travel of your auto attacks with the health of the minion being low enough. A simple solution to this all challenger players utilize is they just walk right up next to a minion, then press the stop command. By default, this is bound to S on your keyboard. By standing next to the minion, you can just right click as soon as the minion's health is low enough, and there's no travel time on your auto attacks, so it will just instantly be killed. This will effectively remove the hardest part about last hitting. Now, I already know, some of you are thinking, I can't stand next to minions all game, or I'm just going to get hit by every skill shot known to man and lose my lane. And guess what? You're actually right. That's why you only use this in situations that the opponent is either zoned or just not in lane. There's actually a really good scenario to use this in. It's when the minion wave is slow pushing to the enemy. Trust me, before I knew this trick, I would easily miss like 50% of all my CS when it was slow pushing to the enemy. The problem is, when a wave is slow pushing, you have way too many minions. It makes it so that they damage the enemy minions incredibly fast, and so it's very hard to time your auto attacks before they die. This is why this trick is so useful. You can just stop command right next to them, and suddenly it's like you're CSing twice as good. And keep in mind, if you're slow pushing, well, the enemy can't trade into you without losing due to your giant wave, so you're often perfectly safe to do this mechanic without being punished for standing still. And our next mechanic is one that is probably the simplest, and yet is the one the least amount of people know about. Honestly, I'm not even lying when I say I kind of want to keep this secret to myself. This is probably one of those mechanics that is the most responsible for increasing my CS per minute. It actually feels like an unfair advantage when you know this trick. So, you know how there are plenty moments throughout the game where you just need to clear a wave, whether it's because an enemy roamed, or recall, you're just pushing to set up your own recall timing, or it's later on in the game and you're just shoving out a side lane. There are just plenty of times where you aren't under any threat of being traded with, and you just need to clear the wave. Well, in these spots, I used to miss so many last hits. That is, before I learned this one simple trick. You always want to focus the caster minions first. Here's the thing, most players in these spots focus melee minions. It makes sense as they're what's closest to you and being damaged by your minions. But that's exactly what makes them hard to last hit, the fact that your minions are damaging them. Instead, what you can do is kill all the caster minions first. It is quite literally impossible to miss the last hits since nothing else is damaging them but you. It's only once the melee minions get low enough from your own minions, you then last hit those. The reason why this works so well is that normally if you focus the melee minions, well, you'll probably miss like 1 CS from mistiming your auto attack with your own minions' damage. and then once those melees are dead, your wave starts damaging the casters, and the cycle repeats. You just miss another CS due to mistiming your auto attack again. When you focus the caster minions first, you actually guarantee you only have to time your last hits on half of the wave, meaning you get 100% accuracy on 3 minions. And remember, if you were in gold elo, you would just need to increase your CS per minute by 1 to be equal to a challenger. And as you can see, by implementing these 3 mechanics we just taught you, understanding how tower aggro works, using the stop command to last hit next to minions, and focusing the casters first, well, you can easily hit that goal and get 2 entire kills worth of gold. Alright, now for this next section, we have a collection of mechanics that are more standalone in nature. They're more hidden mechanics not a lot of players know about, but are really easy to use while being extremely useful in every single game. The first one is left-clicking on an enemy champion to open up their champion panel in the top left corner to get insanely valuable information. It all has to do with the icons that appear below this panel. For example, when you proc LeBlanc's passive, a clone will appear. Well, to know which one is the real one, you just need to left-click. The real LeBlanc will have an icon showing the timer of the passive, whereas the fake LeBlanc won't have that icon underneath the panel. The exact same trick works with Shaco, but in this case it's actually the cooldown of the rune he's running that will appear on the real one. So
Damn.
many players don't even realize this mechanic is in the game. You can even use this to know things like if Anivia has her egg up. You just left click on her, look below the panel, and the icon is gray, so now you know it's on cooldown. It even shows a ticking hand indicating when it will be back off cooldown. This even works with champions that have stacking mechanics like Kassadin, Aurelia, and Graves, just to name a few. It will show how many stacks they have below their champion panel as well. This can be super strong. For example, if you're chasing down a Kassadin and notice that he's low on mana. Well, each stack of Kassadin's ultimate actually will cost more mana, so you can check to see if he has his ultimate stacked up. If he does, well, then you know he can't escape. There are really so many usage cases for this trick. You can even see timers on players' runes like Electrocute, Taste of Blood, etc., all to time your trades better in lane. I mean, it's not even just champions. If you see an enemy has placed a regular stealth ward, you can actually left click on it and hover your mouse over this icon and it will tell you which champion placed that ward. This can be incredibly useful to identify whether a jungler or support is nearby looking to gank you, or if it was just your lane opponent dropping their own ward. There's far more to this than we can cover in this guide alone, but I promise, if you just get into the habit of left clicking on opponents and checking the icons under their panel, you'll realize there was this treasure trove of information under your nose the entire time. Moving on, next up we have the mechanic known as input buffering. Now, the name makes it sound way more fancy than it really is. It can even look really impressive, but it's actually incredibly simple to understand and execute. For those of you who are unaware, most champions, when they cast a spell on an enemy who is out of their range, well, the second they get within range, the game will automatically then cast the ability for you. This is very powerful since it allows the game to react for you. It basically gives you inhuman reaction times. For example, let's say you're playing Malzahar and are low in health and someone with a mobility spell like LeBlanc is coming after you. All you have to do is press R on LeBlanc, and if she ever tries to engage on you, she will instantly be ulted at max range. Now, obviously, most players won't just jump into range and die to Malzahar, as they'll see you move forward aggressively once you press R on top of them. This is why to use this technique properly, you often want to weave in movement commands in between. So, for example, LeBlanc is coming after you, so you preemptively press R. Don't press anything else. You then see LeBlanc's character look away, meaning she's clicked behind her in order to get outside of your ultimate's range. This is then your moment for you to click away and run. Then, as you see LeBlanc's character look back at you, it means she's now clicking in front of her to try and chase you down, so you then preemptively press R once again. You can see how by using input buffering, it is quite literally impossible for LeBlanc to ever engage. Now, that is one form of input buffering, but there's another one that involves using flash. All you have to do is first cue your attack. So in this example, we have a Caitlyn auto-attacking, but it can be a spell instead. Then, once you cue the attack, you simply just flash within range, and the game will automatically attack at inhuman speeds. Keep in mind, if instead you try to flash first and then auto-attack, well, it will take you time to hover your mouse over the enemy champion and press right-click. That's time the enemy can use to flash away to safety or use a mobility spell of their own if they have one. A great example to demonstrate how important input buffering using flash is with Ahri's ability Charm. A lot of low elo Ahri players will always flash and then press Charm afterwards, which again is always going to be slower and allow enemies to react to it. Instead, you want to press Charm and then immediately flash after. Not only does this result in you instantly casting your ability, but it will actually combine the two animations of the Charm and the flash, making it even faster and nearly impossible to react to. This isn't just Ahri specific, the vast majority of champions in League of Legends can input buffer flash with an ability, so hop into practice mode on whatever champion you play and try it out for yourself. Next up, we have what's known as the Target Champions Only Keybind. We highly recommend you rebind this to something you find comfortable. A common hotkey people use for this is the X key on your keyboard. When you hold down your bind for this, it makes it so that you can't target anything but champions with your auto attacks. It does not work on abilities, it's only auto attacks. This is extremely useful in so many scenarios, like when you're tower diving, it will prevent you from accidentally clicking the tower instead of the enemy champion. It pretty much is a necessity if you want to navigate through jungle camps as well. For example, champions with dash through mechanics like Yasuo would end up just aggroing the camp when trying to get into position. But with this keybind, they can move into the right angles without aggroing the camp. The only downside to this is that it can be very hard to cast abilities while also holding down the target champion's only command on your keyboard. So if you struggle with that issue, then you want to enable a new command called treat target champions only as a toggle. What this lets you do is, let's say you set target champions only to X as we recommended. You only have to press it once and it will turn this setting on, and you'll only auto attack champions. You don't have to hold it down. Then when you press it again, it will go back to normal. Essentially, you don't have to hold it down and can just turn it on and off like a light switch. And for our final section, we have a hidden mechanic related to stealth wards called residual vision that pretty much no player even knows about. Notice how after Leona kills the stealth ward, how you can still see her as she walks away. Vision in the area will last for a much longer time than most people realize, as it's a whole 5 seconds despite the ward being removed. Notice how we can see the direction Leona moves towards after she kills the ward. Spotting the enemy is one thing, but knowing which way they path after is super broken. So if you see someone clearing your vision ward, watch them for that extra second or two to see which direction they head to after they kill it, as 99% of players don't realize they're actually being seen. Here's what's even crazier. For those who actually do know it exists, you can actually use it against them if you're the one killing the ward. After you kill the ward, just fake your path one way, then after 5 seconds pass, go in the opposite direction to completely confuse the opponent. Junglers are really good at abusing this trick to lull their opponents into a false sense of security, then walk right back and pick up an easy kill. Keep in mind though, this trick does not work when you kill a control ward. Control wards will drop vision immediately after they've been killed. It's only the stealth wards that will give the extended vision. In addition to this, if a stealth ward simply expires while an enemy is nearby, vision will not persist, as the ward actually needs to be killed in order to see this lingering effect. And don't forget our special limited time offer. We want you to go out and try to implement the mechanics that you just learned in this guide. From there, identify one mechanic that you're struggling with that you just can't seem to get the hang of despite trying to implement what we just taught you in this video. Then head to our website, as you'll find the full course for this video there. Then simply scroll down to the comment section in that course and we'll have a link to a Google form where you can submit a replay of yours where you struggled with that mechanic. That will also give you the opportunity to ask any questions that you have. Tell us exactly what you're struggling with and more. We will then take your submissions and expand the course using your replays, where we go into further detail teaching the mechanics that you guys struggled with the most. We already have over 2 hours of this additional content live on our website right now. Do keep in mind though, submissions will only be accepted for 1 month after this video goes live, so don't miss your opportunity. And if that wasn't enough to sweeten the deal, we've added a discount link in the description below, so make sure to click it to start leveling up your mechanics. And there you have it, 15 of the most important mechanics every player should know in League of Legends. As you can probably tell from me progressively losing my voice as the guide continued, we put a ton of effort into this one, so we hope you guys enjoyed it and found it helpful. As always, we here at Skillcapped want to thank you for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one. In this guide, you're going to learn the best way to macro in low elo. Tell me if these problems don't sound familiar. You try heading into a side lane only for your entire team to immediately get caught out and die. You make a call to take Baron only for your teammates to ignore you, run it down mid and die again. Or maybe you've learned that fancy concept of lane priority. So you make the call to take something like Dragon with it only for none of your teammates to react, and so now you're the one who's dying. This is what we're gonna fix in today's guide. We'll be giving you macro tactics that work in low elo regardless of what your teammates are doing, so that you don't have to rely on them whatsoever. And that's kind of our whole thing here at Skillcapped. We teach you the game from the average player's perspective, you know, where you have terrible teammates you're forced to carry. And we've done a truly massive update for Season 14 with brand new courses on macro, wave control, trading, settings and hotkeys, CSing, vision, mechanics, the list goes on. We even just released 4 multi-chapter massive courses where we teach you how to carry as a mid laner, a jungler, a top laner, and an AD carry with support on its way. And you can try all of this out completely risk-free, since if you don't rank up while actively using skill cap, you get your money back, no questions asked. We can offer this because our service really does work. You can unlock all of this through the exclusive discount you can only access through the link below. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below to get the rank you've always wanted this season. Alright, now the first thing you need to understand about macro in low elo is the power of a knowledge check. A good example of a knowledge check is the standard level 2 all-in. If you have the push advantage at level 1 and are going to hit level 2 first, you're basically knowledge checking the opponent. Are you aware which minion will spike level 2 on you? If they get the answer wrong, it usually results in a massive advantage for you. Here's what's important for you to understand though, it's how passing a knowledge check yourself isn't nearly as impactful. If the opponent has the push advantage level 1 and they knowledge check the level 2 all-in on you, well, guess what happens if you pass it? Nothing. Everything stays the same. This is why when it comes to low elo macro, the goal is to be proactively knowledge checking opponents with macro choices that massively set them behind if they get it wrong. At the same time, the knowledge check has to be completely in your hands. Bad knowledge checks in low elo are going to be questions that rely on your teammates to get right as well. A common example of this is lane priority. Let's say you're a jungler and both you and the enemy path topside. You could have your top lane and mid lane pushing, both having lane priority to react to a fight at the scuttle first. So you go for that scuttle only for none of your teammates to react and you die 1v1. You correctly knowledge check the enemy jungler. Do you know you lack lane priority so you can't go for the scuttle, but to actually punish him correctly required your teammates to also be aware of the knowledge check. Lucky for you, there is one specific macro tactic that knowledge checks the opponents and doesn't require any reliance on your teammates in low elo. The macro tactic you're going to learn in this guide to dominate low elo games is none other than the side lane push. Now, all the games you're going to be learning from in this guide are from real silver games played solo. I also purposely chose champions and roles that are traditionally thought of as being weak at pushing side lanes just to prove how powerful this tactic can be on any champion or role. For example, I played some games as AD carry in bot lane, since having a support is going to result in me losing lane in a bunch of games. And as an AD carry, I'm going to be underleveled compared to the solo laners when I do head into a side lane. Also made sure to pick the literal lowest win rate AD carry on the patch, Kai'Sa. And I already anticipated some of you would rightly complain that Kai'Sa is still too good at dueling, so I also ran games on Caitlyn, another extremely low win rate champion who is much weaker in side lane 1v1s, as well as Sivir, who isn't exactly seen as a great dueler. I even played some games as a jungler to prove it can still work if you're not a laner, and some games as a control mage mid, as most players find it impossible to side lane with the lack of mobility. So let's get into it. When you push a side lane, there are a couple of knowledge checks that will occur. The first one is simply asking the enemy team if they know to send someone to defend. When the enemy team fails this knowledge check, it's always beneficial to you. Yes, even if your entire team dies. I'll prove it. At the start of this sequence, our team has 35,600 gold and the enemy has 34,100. Essentially, our team is ahead 1,500 gold. So we push a side lane, and instead of reacting to us, the enemy team collapses on our teammates. The worst possible outcome occurs with our entire team dying. Now, at the end of the sequence, our team has 38,400 gold and the enemy has 36,900. Wow, our team is still ahead 1,500 gold. Yet, there's a key difference. In this time, we actually gained 1,300 gold directly on ourselves out of the 2,800 our team gained. Meanwhile, the 2,800 gold the enemy gained is spread out amongst their team. Tryndamere gained 680, Echo gained 871, Corki gained 471, Caitlyn gained 545, and Zyra gained 365. What this means is despite the worst case scenario of our entire team getting wiped, we still became stronger than every person on the enemy team by the end of this sequence. And it's important to understand how gold funneled onto a single player scales due to how items work. Firstly, items get a massive power spike once you actually complete them, so when you funnel gold directly on one person, they can get to these item completions faster. Secondly, often the stats items provide actually scale off each other to become even stronger. For example, critical strike scales off attack damage, since it's a percentage increase. Attack speed scales off attack damage and vice versa. The more you have of one, the more powerful it makes the other. Ability haste and ability power have a similar interaction for spell casters. An easier way of understanding this is just imagining one person with 5 completed items and boots versus 5 players with boots and 1 completed item each. That one player is going to be a raid boss and just wipe the entire enemy team. This concept forms the foundation of this macro tactic of pushing side lanes. If the enemy team ever fails to send a defender, we'll always come out ahead, even in the worst case scenario of our teammates dying, since we're always going to generate more gold on ourselves, making us more powerful than any of the other enemies and putting us in a better position to carry. I really want to hammer this home because the biggest macro mistake low elo players make is not understanding how how valuable it is when you push a lane and no one defends, which causes them to group unnecessarily, thinking they have to fight because their teammates are. By using this push tactic consistently, it will result in 3 outcomes that let you carry and win games in low elo. 1. You'll eventually be so farmed that once you do inevitably teamfight, you can just carry with how ahead in gold you are. 2. You're so strong in the sideline that whenever an enemy tries to defend you, you just pick up free kills, getting free number advantages. Or 3. You'll be so strong in the sideline, the enemy stops sending anyone to defend you, and so you just straight up end the game. Also, it's not like the worst case scenario happens every time. Sometimes you get good scenarios like this. Here, mid is our only empty lane, so we start pushing that, and no one defends. We're able to get 2 of the towers and a ton of minions, and during that time we get a winning 1-for-2 trade bot side. The enemy team then collapses on our top lane, but that again leaves open mid, so we get once again a ton of minions, a kill on the defender Lux, into a wave bot side. We literally just generated 2,000 gold on ourselves, while the enemy only got 3,000 gold total to our team's 5,200 gold total. Basically, when you push an empty lane by yourself, you are knowledge checking the enemy team if they know to send a defender. In low elo, teams constantly fail this simple knowledge check, and no matter what, it will always be massively beneficial to you when they do. Great, so by pushing a lane, we start with a simple knowledge check of, do you know to send a defender? If they get it wrong, we always come out ahead. However, even when they do send a defender, this is a different knowledge check they have to get right, sending a defender that can actually, well, defend. Often, low elo players will fail this simple check too. For example, here I'm playing Diana jungle. I notice a matchup I easily win against Lucian in the side lane, so I head there. There's really not much to say here, this is just Lucian not respecting someone stronger than him is missing on the map while he's overextended. I then push aggressively, in this case the enemy Vi tries to collapse, again not respecting the fact they can't actually defend against me 1v1. And again, pushing, the enemy sends a weak defender again, Lucian, that I can 1v1, so it's an easy punish with a tower dive. This will all change right here though. Despite getting massively fed off all this side laning, again I spot Lucian in bot lane and I'm heading there to push. This time he correctly runs away knowing he can't defend. And finally, they send someone who can actually defend against me, their fed Camille. And surprise surprise, we easily die 1v1. Basically every game there will be some matchups you'll win when pushing and some you're gonna lose. You're gonna have to develop the skill to hunt for these favored matchups, but there's a simple way to do this. If we go back to the first clip, as we're leaving base, we hit tab and check the state of ourselves and each enemy champion. You basically just look at 2 things, levels and items. We're level 12 and have 2 completed items, along with a needlessly large rod. If we look at the enemy team, we're ahead of each of them in levels except for Camille, and we're ahead in items on everyone, but again, Camille, who's around even with us. This is how we know we should likely win 1v1 against everyone except for Camille. We're close to even, so that's when it comes down to matchup knowledge. And so, as we're leaving base, what do we see on the map? Camille topside. This is how we know it's safe to just run it down bot. We're confident we'll win every 1v1, so it's an easy kill on Lucian. It's the same thing with the Vi kill, or identifying our threats on the map. Camille being topside, so we're pushing aggressively, hunting for those favorable 1v1s. Same with the Lucian tower dive. We saw Camille top. That's how we knew it was safe to push aggressively and force the enemy into a knowledge check where they send the wrong defender. Yet, look at the scoreboard right before we fight Camille. We're basically dead even with Camille in terms of levels and items. And as we're pushing, she's completely missing from the map, and yet when we do finally see her, I actually choose to fight her despite me clearly losing after. So what's going on here? Well, this is basically matchup knowledge, and I don't play Diana jungle or Camille top, so I don't know how this should play out if we're even in gold this late into the game. I do know Camille is supposed to be a late game beast with her Q, and that in theory she should counter me due to me being more burst reliant and her being a bruiser. However, it's always best to just find out if you truly have never tried the matchup before. I highly recommend if you see someone close to you in items and levels, you just fight them 1v1. This is called limit testing and how you develop matchup knowledge for the future. You basically just int and make a few games harder in the short term to improve and win more games in the long term. Okay, so here's basically what you need to take away. First, when you push and no one sends a defender, it's always a win for you. Second, when you push, you hunt for favorable matchups in the side lanes. Notice how the tough matchup Camille, I literally just pathed away from. And yes, that meant my teammates just inted her on repeat. That's okay. I'm not joking, by the way. This Camille just feasted on my teammates like over and over and over again. But I still ended up winning the game in the end with the macro tactic you're learning. You really don't want to make the mistake of sitting on the back foot trying to play defense against a bad matchup, holding their push. If I did that, I wouldn't have gotten massively ahead by farming Camille's weak teammates, putting me in a position to carry and win. Remember what we taught you first about knowledge checks and the level 2 all-in. Knowledge checks will work best when you're the one asking the question. When the enemy gets to knowledge check you, well, even if you get it right, you don't get any kind of advantage. And don't worry, very soon I'll be going over what to do when the enemy sends the right person to defend and you can't kill them. For now, just know we have 2 easy punishes off 2 failed knowledge checks. The enemy doesn't defend and the enemy sends too weak of a defender. So next, let's talk about the next way the enemy will fail your knowledge check. They send multiple defenders. One of the most common outcomes is something like this. Here, I'm pushing as a Nivea in the side lane. The enemy first fails the knowledge check by not sending a defender, no surprise there, and then eventually fails later on by sending multiple defenders. You can see, despite not being able to get a kill, as long as you do your best to waste the maximum amount of the enemy's time as you die, your teammates will be able to always have the option to get something somewhere else on the map since they have a big number advantage there. For example, here, I definitely could have just grouped grouped with my team as we were ahead enough to win a dragon fight, but I really wanted to show how powerful this concept can be. So I purposely split to force multiple defenders to kill me to show how by timing it with my team taking dragon, they can just take it for free. Now, don't worry, I already know you're thinking that your teammates will not do that. They'll just run around like chickens with their heads cut off, getting nothing done while you die. Yes, that will happen. Let me show you why this is still a good thing for you. Here, I'm pushing topside. I get a good matchup into the enemy Caitlyn that I can kill. However, the enemy team then decides to send multiple defenders to make up for that. I ended up dying, but let's look at what our team decides to do with my pressure. The obvious play would be to use the wave mid to take the mid tower. Instead, our Garen runs topside and just ins for a kill. Lux runs topside to get her steps in and do a whole lot of nothing. Shaco steals the red from the enemy, and Diana heads to farm bot side. Things aren't looking too good, and they're about to get even worse. Right as we respawn, we can see Lux and Diana are feeling charitable as they die for free overextended for pretty much no reason, and naturally immediately throw up a surrender. So how in the world is this a good thing? Well, often when you push up a lane like this and bait multiple enemies to respond, the enemy won't be in a good position to immediately punish you on your death timer, because positionally they're just really far off the map since they're basically in their own base. For example, imagine if I died defending my mid tower instead. Well, that's incredibly easy for the enemy team to do a wide variety of things off that death timer since they're at the center of the map. They could just rotate the Baron to try and force it. They can continue pushing to take towers, maybe an inhibitor. When you're the one pushing, it means the multiple champions the enemy sent will be off the map after you die. Additionally, if you look at the map from the enemy's perspective, it's just straight up hard to make the correct call as a team that fast before you respawn, let alone in low elo. So often, they'll just push out lanes and waste time, letting you respawn and get back into that side lane. And once again, you see the enemy sends multiple defenders. I'm able to escape this time, and if we look at our team, they're literally losing 4v3 despite being ahead in numbers and me pulling the strongest members of the enemy team. I then unfortunately trade 1-for-1 in the split, but you can still see how awkward of a spot this puts the enemy. It's really hard to have a clean winning fight for them when you're down numbers and your strongest members aren't there. They call for Baron, but Caitlyn's and half HP, the fight took so long or Garen has respawned and heading to defend, the enemy Corki decides to recall. It's just typical low elo chaos. Basically, when the enemy sends multiple defenders, they can't be too weak, or you could just end up 1v2ing or getting some sort of highly favorable trade. So the only way to defend you is to send someone strong enough to actually beat you, or just a ton of their teammates. Well, ideally, you waste their time by either escaping or trading kills. Both puts them off the map and gives your team a big advantage. And it's not really about your team getting stuff, it effectively just stalls the game, since the enemy will struggle to get anything meaningful off your death as they're far off the map. This is why sending multiple people fails the knowledge check. Even if your teammates run around like headless chickens, it doesn't actually stop you. You'll just end up back in the side lane once you respawn, forcing them into the same knowledge checks once again. And all it takes is that one time for your teammates to literally do anything useful. Like, check out this case. I'm literally pulling the entire enemy team, and that same Diana and Garen that seemed clueless before just happened to be pushing lanes, and so we get 2 towers and an inhibitor. Of course, they immediately die after for no apparent reason, along with their Shaco too. But again, the enemy has no time to take anything off these death timers since we're dying when we're pushed up. So, back in the side lane we go. The enemy mistakenly tries to force Baron, not realizing they don't have time, and so it's an easy backdoor finish to actually end the game. By pushing and pulling enemies, you're basically making the game easy mode for your teammates. For example, here I start out in mid with my team. No need to be grouped here when I have empty side lanes I can push, so off to the top lane we go. In the meantime, our teammate Udyr dies mid, and then Garen shortly after. None of this matters once we get our push going though. The first knowledge check is failed. No defender is sent, that's free minions and towers. Second knowledge check is failed. They send someone who can't actually defend. Free kill for us. Meanwhile, now our team is getting free kills mid since Fiora isn't there. Third knowledge check is failed. They send multiple defenders, and we're even able to trade 1-for-1. Now our team is getting a free mid tower. Back in the side lane we go. Again, ignoring that Fiora bot side. We want to be the one knowledge checking, not responding to theirs if we can help it. Enemy fails the first knowledge check, not responding. That's free minions and towers. Enemy fails the second knowledge check, sending multiple to defend. That's a free kill for our team mid with the numbers advantage. Enemy fails a third knowledge check, sending someone to collapse on me that can't even 1v1 me. Enemy fails a fourth knowledge check, sending no one to defend. That's a free tower. And the enemy fails a fifth knowledge check in a row, sending multiple, so I trade 1-for-1. Meanwhile, our team gets a free dragon into a kill on Viego with their number advantage. Now, some of you are probably wondering at this point, what should they have done? Well, simply send someone who can clear a minion wave from the safety of their tower. Ahri could just hold all her spells, cast Q, and clear nearly the entire wave instantly. This would prevent me from being able to tower dive her or get that much damage on the tower. Also, high elo Ahris nearly always take teleport. This allows you to hold waves and then still have teleport to react to any roams the enemy would make. This Ahri took Ignite, you can see how this simple macro tactic just exploits so many mistakes low elo players make. I really can't overemphasize just how effective this is in low elo. For example, here I'm mid, I see a fight topside in our jungle, but I ended up getting collapsed on. Our job is simple, they sent multiple people, so we either want to escape or trade one for one. In this case, I need to escape. You can see how low elo players constantly tunnel vision on trying to chase, and so that actually lets our team get a temporary number advantage fight and gets a huge shutdown on Mordekaiser. I then notice the enemy is no longer chasing me, so back to pushing a lane to try and pull pressure. They should just do Baron here, then they can reset or try to collapse on me after, but again, this tactic just abuses low elo players. Akshan tunnels on the kill, failing the knowledge check of whether he can 1v1. This then baits Teemo to try and kill me, which pulls him off Baron, and now Baron is taking so long, it actually sets up a hilarious Baron steal from our Lux, into then having our teammates clean up a ton of kills after, literally swinging the game completely. This is why this macro tactic is so powerful. It constantly forces knowledge checks on the opponent, setting them up to just shoot themselves in the foot. Also, now's a good time to mention, if you want to know the best counter to this kind of macro playstyle, well, it's simply having solid macro fundamentals. Low elo players completely lack it, which is what we're abusing, and there's really no better way to learn this than our new Season 14 macro course. It has nearly perfect 5-star reviews and just passed over 1 million views on our website. You can check it out with a discount link below. Great, so we've gone through a bunch of great scenarios where things go right, but what about when they go wrong? It's not like you're always exiting your laning phase with a lead and can just immediately start 1v1ing opponents. So let's cover that. What to do when you're either behind or the enemy is just doing a good job sending defenders that can kill you or actually defend. So here I'm leaving base. Our team is currently behind nearly 4k gold. For full transparency, my top lane is behind 2700 gold, my jungler is ahead 700, my mid is behind 600, I'm ahead 100, and my support is behind 1.2k. In other words, I'm behind or even with everyone in the game except for a Wukong jungle, which I'm only 200 gold ahead of, while being a squishy AD carry with 1 item completed. I probably can't 1v1 anyone at this point. Still, nothing's gonna change. Off into the empty side lane we go. Take a look at the map. The real scary guys, Mordekaiser and Akshan, are both showing mid. Cool, so we can keep pushing. I spot Jhin and Wukong at Dragon 2. Great, we can keep pushing. It's important to know, their Teemo support can definitely 1v1 me at this point, but Teemo isn't the type of champion to just always be able to engage on me and run me down. There's a chance I'd be able to escape. It'd be the same if Jhin was the one missing. Also, you just have to take some risk when you're this far behind. As we covered earlier, it's not the end of the world if you end up dying when pushing, since it will take any enemies that collapsed on you off the map. And great, as is typical in low elo, they failed the first knowledge check and didn't send a defender. Now, here's what's different. At this point, a lot of threats are missing. Mordekaiser, Akshan, and Wukong. At the same time, my teammates aren't pressuring anything on the map, so if I keep pushing, I'm basically just putting a giant spotlight on myself asking to get collapsed on. And I'm too weak to fight anyone that will come. So, in spots like these, you just fall back into a recall so you can spend your gold. Notice how I'm now much further ahead of Jhin, Teemo, and Wukong in gold. Just like we taught you earlier, when no one responds, it's a big win for you. Here's what's important though. Off that recall, you've now just spent a ton of your gold, so you're often even further ahead of enemies than you realize when you get back onto the map, since players will often be sitting on a lot of unspent gold. This is part of the reason why the first thing we do is group on mid, while we wait for the side lanes to open up. Going mid first will keep us flexible and has a possibility of getting winning fights. For example, in this game, you'll see that I'm half HP and can't push anymore as it's too risky, so it's time to recall to spend my gold. I then immediately head mid with all my gold spent, and notice how by pushing bot, it lures someone there. So often, by the time you get mid, they're still pushing that side lane, giving you a number advantage in mid lane, setting up winning fights for you. In this game though, despite having a number advantage mid off that tactic, Mordekaiser is way too fed, so we wouldn't be able to win even with the number advantage. So when you don't get that play mid, you want to pay attention to the lane you originally pushed. Often in low elo, players will overextend in that lane when they push back. With seeing a ton of enemies bot side and Mordekaiser mid, we switch our pick here to Akshan with our number advantage. Now, if you're in this position and don't have a teammate to help collapse and you can't win 1v1, it is okay to just pick up the wave. Often, the enemy will roam off the push, letting you go back into your own push, letting you knowledge check them for defender. Regardless though, you'll end up in a spot like this, where you're back to pushing an empty lane. You always want to be on the lookout, by the way, to steal camps in between minion waves, as they can act as an in-between move while you wait to see if a threat is coming to match you. You can see in this case, Mordekaiser did, so we have to recall. Now with our gold spent and second item completed, we can look for a potential number advantage fight mid, as their strongest member Mordekaiser is pushing back top. And this forms the typical macro sequence when you're behind. You push a side lane, no one defends, that gets you back in the game. You push a side lane, someone defends you can't beat, so you recall to spend gold. You then group mid and often get a winning fight with a number advantage. If you don't get that number advantage fight mid, you look for it in the side lanes. It's usually the guy who's pushing your wave back, and you just repeat this, stalling the game and getting yourself ahead. You'll become stronger and stronger over time, letting you win 1v1s you previously lost, which then sets up the enemy to fail knowledge checks around setting strong enough defenders. And yes, that will even mean sometimes having to give up Baron, but again, you're funneling a ton of gold on yourself, making yourself stronger and stronger, until eventually that super fed enemy that you couldn't even even look at before, you'll be in position to not only 1v1, but even 1v2, becoming the strongest champion in the game. Now, this sounds great and all, let's address the biggest problem you're going to run into in low elo solo queue. Sometimes your teammates will literally refuse to listen and won't even let you side lane by yourself. For example, here I'm leaving lane, and again, we always default to heading mid, as we can then pivot to any place on the map. I see Diana go mid, Shaco is bot, this means top lane is our open lane. Great, let's get our side laning going. Well, our Garen has other plans. Despite bot lane now being open, he is determined to lane top for absolutely no reason. So now I'm stuck splitting tower gold and minions. This is not good. You need to rotate off this and just let your teammate go top for now. So I head mid, but this is really just an in-between move. I really want to get to the empty side lane bot. So I finish pushing this next wave to set up my rotation, and off to bot we go. Oh, and now our Diana is teleporting in, so we can't go bot either. In spots like these, I highly recommend trying to farm camps in between waves if you can. It will passively put you ahead of other players who are also farming minions at this time. You basically just continue to do this until either 1, the enemy leaves mid open. For example, here I'm playing Anivia, and I even type and ask my bot lane to swap with me, but as to be expected, often you're going to be ignored. I even spam ping they're being ganked bot, but they still try to defend their tower and end up dying. Doesn't matter though, in the meantime, I know that the enemy failed their knowledge check by not sending a defender mid, so I just get tons of free minions and a tower. The second scenario is a side lane finally opens up for you, in which case you're going to rotate to it. In this game, our Garen now decided to lane mid for whatever reason. Great, we can head top. Time to side lane. Oh wait, now Garen is back in our lane again. No point in pushing, so we recall. Looks like we're going to be repeating this until we get a side lane open or they leave mid open. However, here we see Garen recalling, so we just cancel ours, and finally we're in our side lane push. However, we're sitting on a ton of gold while also not having enough for our next item completion. You need to be on the lookout for spots like these where you're close to your next big item spike. You can look to push and then farm camps between waves, and overall you just want to play a bit passive as you look to farm up your next spike. Great, we now have exactly enough for our next item, so you know what to do. Recall, spend our gold, and head on to mid. And what do you know? Just like we taught you, we get an easy number advantage fight with our huge item spike. And off this, we can then transition back into our side lane push, which actually transitions to a clip you saw earlier where the enemy failed the knowledge check of defending, and we got even further ahead from it. Basically, you saw how literally we had to deal with our teammates not letting us side lane for 3 minutes straight. Sometimes that's going to happen, but don't lose patience or get tilted. Eventually, a side lane will open up, you'll still be able to stall the game and get super strong and be able to carry. Now, there are 2 mistakes you need to avoid when executing this macro strategy. First is often you'll become so strong, you'll become overconfident. Like in this game, I got massively far ahead, saw a low health auction, ult in, next thing you know, I'm 1v5 inting throwing the game. Somehow the enemy doesn't end, so I get a second chance, and what do? I don't learn my lesson. Time to ult in again to the entire enemy team and just straight up int. Basically, despite split pushing, literally turning this entire game around for me, I randomly decide to start team fighting, which isn't always bad in and of itself, but it sure is bad if you're just brute forcing fights like this. I made the same mistake in the previous Diana game where I was crushing the game through split pushing. Then all of a sudden at full build, I decided now's my time to group and force team fights. Instead of just continuing to push the side lane, you know, the entire strategy that's been winning me the game so far. And you can see how even when you're massively ahead and get good fights, if your team is just that far behind, grouping is not going to work. So be careful about getting overconfident in grouping when pushing the side lane is working great for you, especially when the rest of the team is behind. The second mistake to avoid has to do with itemization. You know, in that game where I was finally able to 1v1 Mordekaiser despite him being insanely fed all game? Well, I actually lost that game in the end, solely due to an itemization mistake. You can see how we're in what looks to be a great base race, since I should be able to 1v1 the Mordekaiser, their only defender. Instead, I just get demolished. In no small part to misplays mechanically, but my god, was this way harder than it should have been due to the items I built. This then let the enemy run down mid off my death timer and end the game. Basically, Mordekaiser built items to counter me in the 1v1, specifically a Randu and Zomi, and I'm not doing that. It's important to recognize when you're facing a fed enemy that's going to be matching you in the side lane and itemize to counter them. Just to give you an idea of what I could have built instead, while Phantom Dancer should have definitely been a Blade of the Rune King, this would give me % health damage to better counter Mordekaiser's health stacking, also giving me a slow to health kite. Then, instead of a shield bow as my final item, a Maw of Malmortius would have been far better, giving me a similar shield, but providing some much needed magic resistance to counter Mord. Even Mercurial Scimitar would have been better, although it no longer removes Mordekaiser's ultimate, still removes all crowd control while giving you a 50% movement speed boost. This would help me kite as well, while also giving a good amount of magic resist. There's even good synergy with Wit's End, helping me stack attack speed for my passive procs, while giving me magic resist too. I mean, even building something like Kaenic Rookhorn would have been a better choice, as it would hard counter Mordekaiser. Basically, you need to recognize when you're in a game where your team is massively gapped and you won't be team fighting. You want to stick to side laning, identify the main threat on the enemy team, and look to itemize to hard counter them. Also, quick bonus tip here, if you're in a role like top or mid that takes teleport, it makes the strategy even stronger. You want to be on the lookout for pushed waves. Low elo players will get completely caught off guard by you teleporting in on them into immediately pressuring the tower. They'll either fail to send defenders or end up sending weak defenders you can kill. Now, if you found this guide helpful, then I know you'll absolutely love our hyper improvement service at Skillcapped. We've done a truly massive update for season 14 with brand new courses courses on macro, wave control, trading, settings and hotkeys, CSing, vision, mechanics, the list goes on. We even just released 4 multi-chapter massive courses where we teach you how to carry as a mid laner, a jungler, a top laner, and an AD carry with support on its way. And you get to try all of this risk-free, since if you don't rank up while actively using skill capped, you get your money back, no questions asked. We can offer this because our service really does work. You can unlock all of this through the exclusive discount you can only access through the link below. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below to get the rank you've always wanted this season. Alright, and that will do it for this one. We here at Skillcapped want to thank you for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Your turret has been destroyed.
What if I told you there was a strategy with one of the highest win rates in the game, was nearly impossible to counter, and is such an easy playstyle that you could watch Netflix on your second monitor and still win the game? You'd probably think it's too good to be true, but no, Riot actually consciously made the choice to add it into the game all the way back in patch 12.13. And that patch single-handedly caused this one champion to become the most popular pick overnight, where she's stayed ever since. The strategy you're about to learn may just be one of the most accessible, beginner-friendly, consistent playstyles we've ever covered, while also being one of the most powerful. So, which champion will we be using to highlight this new strategy? Will it be Vayne tumbling her way in the side lanes to 1v9 carry? No, far too much mechanical skill. Or maybe it's Twitch roaming around the map picking up free kills. No, too much decision making and map awareness. Spoiler alert, it's none other than Sivir, the queen of wave clear. Now, in this guide, we will be walking you through step by step every single phase of the game, teaching you exactly how to use this strategy. But I want to be clear, there are many other champions that can adopt the playstyle you're about to learn. That's why at the end of this guide we have a tier list ranking other champions that can use this strategy. On top of that, there are core macro concepts throughout this guide that can be applied to any role or champion. So trust me, you don't want to miss this one, as there's something to learn for every player regardless of your role. Plus, I think your mind will just be blown away that Riot even allows this strategy to exist. So, as we mentioned, we'll be going into comprehensive detail, breaking things down from start to finish. So, we should probably start, well, from the start. Here's what's amazing. I've never seen a strategy more consistent with how the early game plays out. At level 1, your plan is simple. We're going to set up what's called a cheater recall. The first step to doing this is to achieve a minion lead at level 1. Sivir is very consistent with this goal since she has great wave clear at level 1 with her Q ability. As soon as you enter the lane, you want to auto-attack minions non-stop and throw your Q out to hit the minions. One useful tip is to try to aim these level 1 Qs so they hit both the minions and an enemy champion. Doing this will pretty much immediately guarantee you control the lane. Great, so we have the minion advantage. Now, we simply maintain this small minion lead. Notice how I'm no longer spamming my auto attacks. The enemy stopped damaging the wave, and so I did as well. This is important as you don't want to over-push the wave. Over-pushing will cause the wave to crash far too early and without enough minions, which will then make it so you can't set up the cheater recall we'll be showing you shortly. When the second wave arrives, don't be afraid to trade with the enemy. You'll be spiking level 2 on them, and so it will either set them up to be all in, or you'll just get a huge health lead once you do the cheater recall. It's on the second wave, when the third melee minion dies, you'll spike level 2 on them, so be prepared to all in if they don't respect it. In this case, the enemy realizes we'll hit level 2 first and backs off. This is actually perfectly fine. You see, now the wave just slow pushes, meaning we stop damaging the wave and only last it. You want to prevent the second wave to crash into the tower too early. Instead, by slow pushing, the third wave arrives in time to keep the wave outside of the tower. It's on this third wave that has a siege minion we want to hard crash the wave and push it as fast as possible, and boy can Sivir push fast. Great, now the enemy will be stuck under tower farming the wave you just pushed to them, making them unable to match your recalls. At the same time, the wave you pushed will have so many minions that it will take them a long time to actually clear it. And since it takes so long to clear, the fourth enemy wave will actually get stuck on it. When this happens, it causes what's called a rebound. See how the minion wave is closer to their side of the map than ours? Well, this means the minions are pushing to us. This is called the even minion rule, and it happens because the enemy's reinforcing wave arrives sooner, thus focus firing and damaging our minion sooner and causing it to push towards us. This is why the cheater recall works. The enemy can't recall, well we can, and then it pushes back towards us, so we hardly lose any minions and have a nice wave built up for us when we get back. And here's what's really cool. Remember, the enemy took damage both from poke and trades, and so we're not only coming back with an item advantage, but also a health and sustain advantage. Your goal here is just to thin out the wave, meaning try to damage the wave to the point where the enemy has around 3 caster minions more than you. This is the sweet spot that will let you hold a freeze indefinitely. In this case, the enemy Kalista knows that being low on health, behind in items, and having no sustain, that she has no choice but to recall. However, by recalling, she's now just bleeding out minions due to our freeze. So by the time she gets back to the lane, we have 31 CS to 21, and this Kalista played near perfect, and it still didn't matter. Keep in mind, she didn't fall for the level 2 all-in, she didn't overstay and die when we got back to lane, and yet she's still behind. That's the power of this strategy. But it doesn't stop here. You know what's really disgusting about this strategy? Is there really is only one way to counter it, and that's to punish Sivir before the full power of her wave clear comes online. And so that naturally poses the question, when does her wave clear come online? Level 9? Level 7? No, it's as early as level 5. At level 5, you will have 3 points in your queue, which means you can clear the entire wave in just one spell rotation. Prior to hitting level 5, it will always take you 2 rotations of your spells, and that leaves you vulnerable to be traded with, since the enemy will just see you use your Q and W on the wave, and then just go aggressive while it's on cooldown. That's why the cheater recall as an opener is so strong. We avoid our early weak levels by getting a push lead and setting up the recall timing to get an item advantage. And remember, the cheater recall will set up a rebound so the wave will push into us. For example, in this game, I'm facing the strong lane duo of Lucian Lulu, who are just way stronger than Sivir early on. But by setting up the cheater recall into a rebound, the wave is now pushed to us. We just thin out the wave to maintain at least a 3 caster minion lead, so we can keep it frozen at the safety of her tower. By doing this, you'll eventually hit your level 5 power spike, at which point you unlock insane pushing power, where the enemy just doesn't even get to interact with you. And the early laning phase is really that simple. Cheater recall levels 1 to 3, and then freeze off the rebound until level 5. And now that you've unlocked your wave clear, there are 2 key strategies you're going to implement. The first strategy is recall timings. So here, I just hit level 5, and check this out. I wait for the next wave to arrive, and with a simple W and Q, I clear the whole wave. I then use that wave of mine as a shield, walking forward hoping someone will trade with me, as they will instantly lose due to a giant wave attacking them. And as easy as that, we just took half of Morgana's health bar. Keep in mind, you still need some common sense. I'm backing off here, since that big wave is now being thinned out and isn't as strong. I wait for my reinforcing wave to arrive, and question time. Will I A, look to use amazing spacing with my 50 auto attack range advantage on Morgana to land free harass? Or will I, just forget it, spoiler alert, I press W and Q and just clear the entire wave. Same pattern, walk the wave in looking for trades with my minions. You can even use these pushes to start farming plates and landing poke while the enemy tries to last hit under tower. Wait a second, look at Sivir's mana. This strategy is completely unsustainable. Skill caps lied to me. I'll just run out of mana and then die in lane. I'll never get diamond. I knew it was too good to be true. Alright, settle down. This is where recall timings come into play. All you have to do is hit W and Q and recall after pushing the wave. And now, I'm going to be honest with you guys, what you're about to see may make you think less of me. I'm not proud of it, but I had to do it just to prove a point to you guys. If we jump back a moment, there's one useful trick to make your recall timings insanely effective. Look to hard push the wave right before a siege minion wave spawns. And for those who don't know, a siege minion wave will spawn every 3rd wave. The reason why this works is a siege minion has a lot of health and is slower to clear, giving you more time to head back to lane after you recall. On top of that, it can absorb a ton of tower shots, which prevents the enemy from getting the wave for life, doing nothing but farming minions under tower. Naturally, when I get back to lane, she's just bored out of her mind and tries to brute force a trade to stop this living hell from continuing. But unfortunately for her, it's only going to get worse. Now, don't worry, I'll be going over shortly exactly why we won this fight against Kalista, as it involves a very important trick you'll need to know in order to execute this strategy. But first, I want to cover the second strategy you'll be implementing off your push, roaming. Let's hop into a different game to show you what I mean. So, I'm in lane, and boy, can you guess what I'm about to do? That's right, press W and Q. I'm too good at this game. With the wave clearing faster than my self-respect, I now have a massive timing window to go do something before the next wave arrives. We could recall, as we just covered, but we don't need to, as we have plenty of mana and aren't sitting on a lot of gold. Instead, I see my jungler is on the bot side of the map, and call for Dragon since we have it control warded. While all of that happens, the enemy tries to tower dive our mid laner, and so I just go to help clean up the kill. And what do you know? I even make it back to bot lane in time for lunch, which consists of a steady diet of minions. Essentially, you clear waves so fast, you just get this massive timing window that you can really do anything with. For example, in this game, I clear the wave and use the timing window to go help with Dragon. I then clear the next wave and go take Krugs with that timing window. Later on in the same game, I clear the wave to go get Vision, destroy Blast Cones, and take a Rift Scuttle. The point is, with how fast you clear the wave, and how the enemy ends up being pinned to their tower, you just have a ton of options to pick from, which is what makes this strategy so consistent. Now, I already know some of you are thinking, Well, this all sounds great when you have control of the lane, but I just know something will go wrong in my games. Well, check this out. In this game, my support decided they needed some exercise and just started doing laps around in our jungle. Maybe they enjoyed the scenery, who knows. The result of this was that I was left to 1v2 in bot lane. Here's the thing, your wave clear is so good that the enemy can't really get anything from pushing, as you can just instantly clear the wave. That's what's so insane about this strategy. You're very effective at both the offense and defense. Now, before we move outside of the laning phase, earlier we won that fight against Kalista, and I said I'd tell you an important trick you need in order to execute this strategy. Well, here it is. Everything you just learned will work 99.9% of the time as long as you follow this one rule. Always let your support be the one to make contact first. Let me show you what I mean. In this game, we're playing Sivir with a brand support against a Tristana Morgana. You already know what our plan is, we'll get that push advantage to set up the cheetah recall. We have one problem though. Our brand support is just kind of sitting AFK. He's not trying to trade, he's not trying to land poke or damage the minions. Shocking, I know. If we pause here, this means I'll be the focus of the enemy trades. I'm the one who's positioned most forward. This is not the positioning you want. You see, as Sivir, you're trying to win mainly through wave control, not through trades. So if you try and trade with the enemy when the wave is in a neutral state like this, you'll just lose and get zoned from the wave after. Notice how every time I auto-attack, I'm slightly moving back. I'm trying to move relative to Tristana and Morgana. When they move forward, I'll need to back up until my support is the one in front. I then get hit by one of the craziest hitboxes I've ever seen, but I use one of the tricks I taught you earlier. I use my Q to damage the enemy champion and minions at the same time, and you'll see me kite away instead of forward. I'm trying to get them to focus my brand, not me. Once they do then focus my brand support, I then try to move to help him and trade. Now, I know you're thinking, well, you're pretty low in health, this didn't seem to work at all. Well, this is why you'll want to start Longsword and Refillable Potion. We can just consume all of our refillable potion charges to sustain up and set up that cheater recall on the third wave anyways, which will fill it back up. Now, I want to slow things down here as there's a very important lesson in movement here that you won't catch otherwise. So here, Tristana is making the mistake of initiating a trade onto my support. These are the trades we want, where our brand will take damage and we won't. So notice how I click forward to get in a closer position to trade with Tristana. However, Brand continues to walk back, so then I make sure to walk back with him, because I don't want to suddenly be refocused. But then I see him turn around. This signals to me I can turn around as well and try to trade since Brand is the one being focused. But again, Brand walks away, so then I have to turn around and also walk away. When we play this at normal speed, it will literally look like nothing was happening, but there was this whole mechanic going on underneath the surface. Alright, so I begin damaging the wave, and again, pay attention to my positioning. When I see Morgana or Tristana move forward aggressively, I begin moving backwards. I never want to be the one to make first contact in these trades. Keep in mind, I literally spike level 2 over the opponent, and my brand is just standing a mile back. I don't make the mistake of trying to trade off this level 2 advantage, as I'd still be the first one to make contact. Sivir just isn't good at winning straight up trades, so your priority should always be to get that wave control advantage. If the waves are relatively neutral, then you'll always need to remember to back up until your support makes first contact. Now, the third wave arrives, and it probably looks like we can't cheat a recall. I mean, we didn't build up that big minion lead in the first 2 waves. Well, Sivir is kind of just that broken. Sure, we can't clear the whole wave in one spell rotation like we can at level 5, but with 2 spell rotations, we're still able to set up a recall timing. Also, our brand support didn't even match our recalls. Like, this is truly one of the worst supports you can have. He sat back and done nothing so far, and doesn't even take a free recall timing with us. Instead, he ends up just having to trade his flash while just kind of sitting there, not even getting minion XP. Yet, it doesn't really matter with the strategy. I get back to lane with full health, renewed sustain, and an item lead, and immediately begin trying to thin out the wave so I can maintain that freeze in front of the tower off the rebound as we covered earlier. But our brand, with no flash, decides now's the time for him to start harassing and getting aggressive. Check this out though, since Tristana is the one who jumps in and makes first contact, by the end of the fight, sure, our brand is dead, but Tristana is extremely low in health. I'm actually in a fantastic position. Tristana has no way to push me out of lane due to my health lead, and I'm poised to freeze the wave in front of my tower, meaning if she recalls, she'll lose a ton of minions. And likely realizing how bad of a spot she's in, and how she needs the wave to crash, she tries to all-in me, but with the health and item lead I have, it's easily won. This right here is the power of letting your support make first contact on trades. In fact, I then reset and get back to lane with the same game plan. We're not level 5 yet, so we want to thin out the wave, try to maintain a freeze until we hit that level 5 breakpoint. I'm really just playing defensive and backing up if the enemy tries to move in to trade on me. Again, Tristana jumps in and focuses the support, which he kills, but then since I'm completely healthy, I'm able to clean up the double kill right after. So now if we go back to that original Kalista clip, you'll see that tactic in action. Kalista moves forward, and I make sure to move back since I don't want to take the initial contact on the trade. Then notice how Lulu starts moving forward. I basically just mimic her positioning so I'm ever so slightly behind her. Then, as soon as Callista focuses Lulu, I know it's GG and commit to the fight. This is why in these clips, it looks like the enemies are just inting into me. Put yourselves in their shoes. You have a Sivir who's just going to push you in, and every time you move forward, they just move back, so you can never trade with them. They're then setting a permanent freeze on you. Finally, you get the opportunity to trade with their support being in range, so naturally, you take it. But that just results in trading your life for the supports, leaving Sivir alive to clean up. Alright, so before we jump into the macro portion of this guide, which trust me is absolutely insane, let's just briefly recap what our game plan is when laning. Levels 1 to 3, you look to implement a cheater recall. When you get back to lane, you then look to freeze until level 5. Once you're level 5, you'll be able to clear entire waves in one spell rotation of your Q and W. You want to either take recall timings off these pushes, or use them to take things in the nearby vicinity, such as vision control, dragons, reacting to fights near mid lane, or just taking a jungle camp. Remember when doing this, you need to just follow one rule. Always let your support take contact first on trades. And if in the event your support is truly hopeless, and it's genuinely a 1v2, well, you're incredibly good at just holding the tower by yourself and stalling the enemy's ability to take the tower or snowball anyways. And that's it. It's really that simple. No learning complex mechanics or matchups or combos. That's pretty much everything you'll ever need to know when it comes to laning with Sivir. You know what's really crazy though? That's not even Sivir's real strength. She truly begins to shine once the laning phase ends. And before we jump into the macro section,